No, you will. The bars right there, dog right there.
Sounds good. We are good. I'm lost. All right. Melinda Tuhus. Sorry if I'm killing your name. Melinda Tuhus twice. Melinda for the third time. Thomas Williams. Thomas Williams. Thomas Williams. Ooh, flying. And Dauphiné. Wow, where'd that one come from? All right. Chris Phelps. Chris Phelps. We do the right list? Kidding. All right, Chris Phelps. Pass two. Joe Petruzzi. I think he left. Bruce Tolhurst. Please proceed.
Thank you. Senator Lopez and the Environmental Committee. My name is Bruce Tolhurst. I live in Marlborough, Connecticut. Thank you for the opportunity of testimony. I'm testifying today in support of SB 1149, an act eliminating all restrictions for sunny hunting in public. I've written my written testimony. There's a lot of pieces in there. There's one extra piece I'd like to add in summary here. And that is, we should be sharing all of our facilities in the state. So we can go share, hunt Sundays, and have biking and hiking and everything else on Saturday, do it together. I think that the suggestion, all right, to give one day, all right, to the non-hunters is extremely selfish. I also question whether the people speaking here speak for all of the non-hunters, because my experience is just the opposite. They don't have a problem sharing time with us and sharing Sundays. I happen to do a lot of hunting or simulated hunting on Sundays. I belong to the American Hunting Dog Club. And on Sundays, on actually 14 Sundays out of every year, March through September, we get together at Mansfield Hollow with a field trial permit from DEP that allows us to hold field trials and train our dogs in a simulated hunting. We're allowed to liberate birds. We're allowed to shoot firearms with live ammunition. So it's every way, in every manner, a hunting activity on Sunday. In Mansfield Hollow, there's 125 acres that is a field trial designated area. There's about 250 acres that is designated as a park area out of a 2,000 property, state-owned property, or state managed, is not actually owned by the state, but state managed property. And we coexist. The bikers come in, the hikers come in, the dog walkers come in. We ask with signage, tell them to use the side trails so that they're not in our areas we're using. When we're down in the water, the fishermen come over, the kayakers come over, the canoers. We're aware of everybody's presence, all right? They're having a good time in the day. They're not concerned with our being there. They're not concerned with the firearms, all right? So my experience and my belief is, all right, there's a minority of individuals that don't want this to happen on Sunday, and they're representing it like they're all the non-hunters. And my belief is they're just a small portion of it, and most non-hunters are okay sharing the woods with us, sharing the properties that DEP says is safe to allow hunting in the forms of hunting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your patience and time. Ted Whipple. Sir Ted Whipple. Am I dating myself for asking for Mr. Whipple?
You are, because I don't know what that means.
This guy doesn't know what that means. God. All right, have a good one. Drive safe. Joel Liza. I already called him, I think. God, who are the other two people?
I do have number 66 that might have been called before, Joe Petruzzi. I was just told that he was actually, in fact, in the room.
Hang on. Yes. If you got him, Mr. Petruzzi. On Zoom. Is he there, guy?
I'm here.
Oh, go ahead. We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yep.
All right. Thank you for bringing me back in. I was there all day, but you know, I took your advice and I drove home. So, all right. So I'll be quick. What I want you guys to do while I'm speaking is please just think of one thing. Think of making memories. That's what I want you to think about. So my name is Joe Petruzzi. I'm the president of the Woodbury South Bay Rod and Gun Club. I'm also who services 160 members with 35 junior members and student members also. I'm also a delegate to the Northwest Connecticut Sportsmen's Council, and we service over 3,000 members, basically every club in the northwest corner. And I'm an instructor for the Connecticut Hunter Education team also. So one of the biggest questions I get a lot is from young parents and young kids that take the courses is, when do I get out and hunt? It's hard. We all know what the economy is like now. We all know that these people are working 7 days a week, and it's hard for them to get their children out. You know, it's hard for them to get out, but it's hard for them to get their children out. It's hard for grandparents to take grandkids out. It's hard for uncles and aunts to take their nephews and nieces out. So that being said, I want you to think about making memories when you were younger and you got to make those memories with your family members, whatever it was that you enjoyed doing. This is something that these kids enjoy doing. They want to feel that they have that passion. They want to learn more. They want to get out there. And we as a society have been trying for years to get these kids off of the computers, off of their phones, and out into the woods, whether it be for hunting, fishing, walking, nature, anything like that. We're trying to get them away from electronics. And there's no opportunity for them because their parents are working Monday through Saturday. And on Sunday, you know, they can't do that. I hear a lot from people who are against this. I don't want to share the woods on a Sunday with hunters. You know, they want to walk. Well, let's be realistic. There's not a lot of state forests that we can hunt in. Yep.
Yeah, the beeper went off. If you can summarize quickly.
I'm sorry. Okay, so to summarize that, there's not a lot of time for, you know, there's a lot more places for people to hike in state parks than there is for hunters to hunt in state forests. So I'll leave it at that. And I just want you to remember making memories. Make those memories with your family members because that's what it's about.
Sounds like
I appreciate your time.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Chris Herb. Herb or Herb? Herb.
Hello, my name is Chris Herb. I'm president of the Connecticut Energy Marketers Association. We represent 600 family-owned local home heating oil dealers that are now selling bioheat fuel, propane, gasoline, diesel, HVR services. We employ over 13,000 people in the state. I'm here today in opposition to Bill 1147. We're opposed to the language specifically in Section 9. The bill brings in a number of our members who own bulk terminal storage because it would discourage fuel terminals or affecting facilities as they're designated in the bill that need to expand a transition from fossil fuels to renewable fuels like biodiesel. General Assembly took bold action when they passed a law that required the state to transition from traditional home heating oil to bioheat fuel that is made in New Haven from plant oil, animal fats, and used cooking oil, has a nearly BTU equivalent to traditional heating fuels. This transition requires terminals and storage facilities to blend biodiesel and other renewable low carbon liquid fuels with heating oil. Expanding facilities or buildings, new state-of-the-art ones so that we can prevent deterioration of older ones, which would increase the health and safety hazards in the communities in which they are located. Fuel storage terminals or affecting facilities are already required to comply with Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act, which is EPCRA, where local emergency planning committees must provide information about what fuel is being stored in the community to citizens. Plans are developed by these committees with stakeholder participation. Those stakeholders include members of the community, various law enforcement code officials. EPCRA covers emergency planning and community right to know, which is part of the intention of this bill. Reporting on hazardous and toxic chemicals. States and communities working with facilities can use this information to improve safety and protect the public health and the environment. The Environmental Protection Agency also requires these facilities to have SPCC plans, which also I believe this bill is trying to capture. So my point is that there's some redundancy in the existing laws and regulations, not to mention the voluminous number of permits and public hearing processes that local family businesses have to go through to run these terminals. My point is that as we make this change, there requires significant investment in inline blending and other various modifications that need to be made. And we think that this bill discourages those investments in those facilities. So if you have any questions, I've submitted written testimony. I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Herb? Seeing none, thank you. Chris Karen.
Chairman.
Yep.
Members of the Environment Committee, good evening.
Please proceed.
My name is Chris Karen. I'm a Fairfield resident, and I'm disappointed that the legislature is again considering allowing hunters to kill our native black bears just for fun. Less than 1% of Connecticut residents are licensed hunters. Interestingly, a survey revealed that 74% of DEEP employees are hunters. I've included more results from this DEEP survey in my written testimony. In a study describing how Americans think about wildlife, sponsored by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, scientists identified two opposing views towards wildlife. The predominant view today is, quote, a vision of humans and wildlife living side by side without fear. These people treat their pets like family or companions deserving of care. At the other end of the spectrum is an antiquated view that scientists call domination. Hunters believe that, quote, wildlife is subordinate and should be used in ways to benefit humans. This belief in man's dominance over animals has had catastrophic consequences throughout American history. Our ancestors nearly wiped out the American bison, shooting them for fun from passing trains. Here in Connecticut, Deep River and Ivoryton fueled the devastating trade in elephant ivory. And from Mystic Seaport, we set sail around the world, slaughtering whales to near extinction. But we're making progress towards creating a more compassionate and sustainable Connecticut. Hunting has been declining in popularity while wildlife viewing is on the rise. You passed Desmond's Law protecting innocent and vulnerable animals. Why then should we kill an animal that Deep describes as generally shy and secretive and seldom aggressive towards humans, even when clubs are present? Experts agree that black bears are highly evolved, sentient animals with feelings and emotions. The problem of habituated bears can be solved by requiring people to amend their own behavior, remove food attractants, and require farmers and beekeepers to follow best practices like erecting electric fences. Nationwide, more people are killed by domestic dogs, bees, or lightning than by black bears. In fact, more people are killed by hunters in Connecticut than by black bears. There hasn't been a single reported fatal bear attack in the state. Meanwhile, from 2000 to 2019, the state reported 4 hunting fatalities and 50 hunting accidents in Connecticut. If your goal is to protect the public, then we should be talking about banning hunting, not expanding it. I urge you to vote no on SB 1148 and SB 1149. Your vote will save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karen. Any questions? I don't see any. So thank you very much for your testimony. I see Mr. Liz and Mr. Stepsky with your hands up. Don't worry, you're still on the agenda in your original positions. So I will call you when we reach you. I think there's only one left in the room. Am I correct to testify? Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell? Anyone else who's in the room who wants to testify? What is your name, ma'am? Gail. Please talk to the clerk. Go ahead, Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell, right?
Yes, it's Dr.
I
Mitchell.
don't know.
Yes, I'm Dr. Mark Mitchell. I'm an associate professor of climate change, energy, and environmental health equity at George Mason University, where I work remotely from my home here in Hartford. I'm also co-chair of the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. I was previously the director of the Hartford Health Department. I'm a founder of the Connecticut Coalition for Environmental Justice, and I am the primary author of the first environmental justice bill, along with Representative Jack Hennessy. The current environmental justice law was successful in increasing notification of environmental justice communities about new and expanding facilities and slowing the growth in the number of affecting facilities in Connecticut. But it was not successful in decreasing the exposure to pollution and to or in the growth of affecting facilities or in health disparities. So I support the raised bill 1147 with some amendments. What we need to do is to strengthen the Act concerning environmental justice programs of DEEP to allow denial of permits and to establish 3 levels of overburdened communities. That would be affected communities, seriously affected communities, and severely affected communities, depending on the number of facilities that are in that community. The bill should be strengthened for presumption of denial of permits in seriously or severely affected communities, unless there are extenuating circumstances. Those of us who live in environmental justice communities, such as Hartford, find that this is not a theoretical issue. The allergies, the asthma, the ADHD, the cardiovascular disease that we suffer from is associated with the air pollution. Connecticut has the second highest level of air pollution of any state. I'm sorry, the highest level of air pollution of any state east of the Mississippi. In my extended family, I'm the first one to have ever had asthma out of the 30 or so folks in our family. I'm the first person to have cardiovascular disease, 4 artery disease. I've had to have 2 stents placed in. So because of this, we really need to take action to reduce the exposure to air pollution and other environmental hazards. We also need to keep in the provisions for exclusion of institutionalized low-income people, such as students or those who are incarcerated, so that when you look at a population, that you don't include students as low-income people for that. So again, thank you, Senator Lopes, and the members of the committees.
Most are still listening on at home.
Okay.
Representative Palm has a question for you.
Simple comment. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for all your wonderful work and for helping lay a really good foundation for this bill. No questions. Thank you.
Representative Baumgartner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for waiting it out today, and for your continued advocacy on environmental justice issues. Earlier today, I asked our deep commissioner a question, and I asked her, has any permit been denied by their department for an existing or for a new facility or expanding facility? And she answered there was one in New Haven, and I know we talked offline about that scenario, about how often DEEP has denied a permit, but can you speak to some of that history briefly, if possible, and why it is so important to have, legislation with teeth?
Right. It's really, really important that we be able to do that. It was very, very difficult to get that done. And that was the first time that the Deep Commissioner had ever overruled a recommendation from his staff. And it was the only time that there's been an environmental justice ruling. There are hours and hours spent trying to protect the health of the public. Low-income people, people of color are much more likely to have multiple exposures from like the trash incinerators, from the traffic, from the some of the recycling facilities, from the water, the combined sewage systems, where the sewage leaks into people's basements and into their streets. So we don't have the protections from these combined and cumulative exposures. So that's why it's really, really important that we need to be able to do that without spending tens to hundreds of hours. The presumption should be that we're protected, that there's not so much more exposure in Bridgeport, in Hartford, in Middletown, and in New Haven than in any other parts of the state.
Thank you for that, Dr. Mitchell. And just one last question. It is so important that the public understands to the extent how polluted their communities are, by virtue of looking online onto a government website. And so my question to you is, do you believe the existing information that is available to the public is easy to understand and accessible with respect to kind of the environmental justice issues in our state?
No, not at all. It's not easily accessible, and there's not a lot that people can do about it. We know, for example, that if you live on the downwind side of a highway, or you're going to school on the downwind side of a highway, that you will have lower grades than if you're on the upwind side of a highway. There are just so many environmental justice issues. And I think that we need environmental justice organizations that can tackle a lot of these issues statewide.
Well, thank you again, and no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Reyes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dr. Mitchell, thank you very much for sticking around and testifying tonight. And I just want to follow up some of our conversation that we've had the other day. How I guess my question is more, how do we get more agencies involved to support environmental justice and to be able to educate the uninformed?
Right. Yeah, I think that we need to follow the lead of environmental justice folks. Over the last 10 years, the environmental justice community has been starved of funding and hasn't been able to raise the issues in our community. So, for example, I know that you are from Waterbury, and in Waterbury, the pollution from the power plants raises up to the level of the homes in the surrounding hills. And so people are exposed to that. They could have done other things. They could have not built the power plant there in the middle of a densely populated community. They could have made the stacks higher. There are many things that they could have done. But because the community wasn't educated, didn't know that these things were going to be proposed in advance, then nothing was done, or very little was done to protect the community. The state should be funding at least 5 environmental justice organizations around the state to have the community to make the recommendations on how to best protect the people who are most impacted.
Dr. Mitchell, thank you for that answer. And thank you for your advocacy in the state of Connecticut. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Representative Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for all your amazing work. I wanted to go back to the permitting or to the existing impacting facilities. 2 quick questions. One, do you think the environmental justice map online reflects, or is it, do you think it's complete at this time, or is it incomplete? And then my second question is, do you also support amending the bill so that we also address the existing affecting facilities? Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
So yes, thank you so much for the question. Yes, the current maps need to be updated. And as I stated in my testimony, I think that there need to be 3 levels of overburdened communities: those that are affected, those that are seriously affected, and those that are severely affected. So I'm in support of this, but I think of this bill, but I think that it needs to be strengthened and brought up to date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Michelle, you look like you're breaking into Watergate.
That was last night.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Senator Lopes.
Next, I have Joseph Gilbert. Joseph Gilbert, I do see you.
Yes, sir.
I can hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Honorable co-chairs, Senator Lopez, Representative Gresco, Vice Chair, Senator Hockadell, Representative Palm, and members, Senator Harding and Representative Callahan, and esteemed members of the Environment Committee. My name is Joseph Gilbert. I hail from Milford and from the Port of Stonington, representing Empire Fisheries and 41 years in the marine and fishing industries. I participate in fishing, fisheries research, and fisheries management. House Bill 6812, in my opinion, is unnecessary. The environmental impacts of the Long Island Sound trawling fleet is minimal. The diesel emissions are addressed through the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, called DERA, which replaces older equipment with modern low-emission Tier 3 and Tier 4 engines. Connecticut's inshore trawlers number less than 10 and are smaller, lower horsepower vessels with modest fuel consumption. The trawlers discharge emissions while producing a renewable, sustainable food source for our citizens. There's a carbon cost to benefit ratio that is entirely acceptable, especially when I contrast it with large recreational vessels that burn more fuel in 1 hour than a trawler consumes in a whole day. The impacts to our ecosystem are also minimal, and regulations already exist to reduce environmental impacts. Mesh size regulations are scientifically designed for bycatch reduction. The few trawlers that operate in Long Island Sounds are seasonal, and daily effort is limited due to daily catch limits. Connecticut's DEEP, legislators, and fishermen worked collaboratively to secure additional quota of sea bass and fluke. The result has been new economic opportunities and a stabilizing effect on harvests and markets, resulting in benefits to fishermen and consumers. Without trawlers, Connecticut would have no capacity to harvest its inshore quota, jeopardizing the aforementioned benefits and the quota itself. These hard-earned gains would be reversed if this bill were enacted. So therefore, I do not support House Bill 6812 in its present form. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative Baumgartner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Joe, it is great to hear you. And hope all is well. And my best to your family. Just a quick question. You talked about bycatch reduction, and I think I would imagine the intent of this bill is to do that. However, obviously, you've illustrated that this is an important industry and an industry you've depended on to feed your family, and an industry that would be under threat should we, obviously take on what we're trying to achieve with this bill. So my question to you is, what steps have you taken as a company to reduce bycatch? I know we've talked about that in the past, but if you can just explain to the committee, so that way they get a sense of what you actually have to deal with, with your real job.
Yes, thank you for the question. So fishermen are very concerned about longevity of their industry and conservation and preservation of species. So what happens is if a fisherman identifies a high bycatch area, we do notify our regulators, and then measures are taken to evaluate, assess it, and identify mitigation measures. Right now, the trawl fleet in Long Island Sound is using 5-inch mesh and 6-inch mesh, depending on whether it's a diamond or a square. That's a pretty good size hole for small fish to escape through. There are some small mesh fisheries, but they are usually executed in the time of the year when it's appropriate to use smaller mesh, and the species that would represent bycatch aren't present. So in my own company, I've worked with universities and foundations to redesign gear to be more efficient for less swept area, to reduce our carbon footprint, gear that pulls through the water easier, and has built-in aspects of it to let bycatch escape from the gear.
Yes, and Joe, how often is our gill nets and trawlers used within the marine waters of Connecticut?
Well, DEP could certainly outline effort, because in our logbooks we report every day's effort and how many hours we spent on the water, the duration of a tow, the catch, and our discards. So it's seasonal. When the fluke and the sea bass show up in the summer months, activity and effort increases. Right now, there's very few trawlers working this time of the year. Perhaps someone's seeking some herring. But as far as trawling in Long Island Sound goes, there's not much activity right now.
All right. And Joe, I'm sure that there are, that you would avail yourself to this committee, maybe during the summertime, to invite this committee down to the town docks.
Oh, absolutely, sir. We are proud of the achievements we've made in fisheries conservation, and we'd love to show them off.
All right. And that's obviously an open invitation to our leadership as well. So Chair Lopes, we'd love to see you down at Stonington.
As long as you're paying. Representative Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert, for coming to testify. I've appreciated a lot of our conversations in the past on other domains like offshore wind. I wanted to ask you a little bit more information on the heavy gear. My question would be, does the heavy gear reach the seafloor? That would be a first question.
Yes, sir, it does. Fishing equipment, typically otter trawls is what I'm speaking of, are held open by what's called otter boards or trawl doors. And if you picture a water skier outside the wake on each side of the boat, in effect, that is what the trawl door achieves. It has some shearing action through the water, but there's also a ground effect shearing action. So it does leave a furrow in its track. But studies have shown that those furrows are recolonized very quickly. It's a dynamically, the hydraulic environment is very dynamic. There's a lot of energy there. So disturbances in the seafloor are very quickly smoothed over or redistributed. The small disturbances I'm talking about We also make contact with the seafloor along the sweep of the net. But a good fisherman can adjust his sweep to basically tickle the bottom instead of drag it heavy. And there's benefits to that. It's less wear and tear in the gear. We don't pick up crabs and rocks and benthic organisms. Most of those things will pass under the net. And at times, nets are designed with larger belly panels. So demersal species, flounders and things can go through the bottom of the net, especially in squid nets when we're using smaller mesh. If there's any larger fish present, there's a separation behavior. Some fish go down, some fish go up. So the gear is designed to take advantage of that fish's avoidance behavior and let it through the equipment. But yes, sir, it does contact the bottom.
No, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I'm trying to assess more on the release of sequestrated carbon from the seafloor. I know it's probably less likely in sandy bottoms, but and also in terms of bycatch, I mean, I did get some numbers from the federal on the bycatch, and I did see horseshoe crabs and other benthic organisms. So I don't think that necessarily everybody has the same practice, and you know, there's other factors, you know, again, like the emissions or emissions coming from the movement of sediments on the bottom that are something that is also outside of the biodiversity bycatch or etc. I'll just keep it at that. I'd like to continue the conversation offline, and I appreciate you testifying, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I see no further questions, and we have it on the record that Representative Baumgartner is going to pay for dinner when we visit you. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for your time, sir.
No problem. Ms. Black, I think that was your name. And sorry, the gentleman in the corner, are you waiting to testify?
Yeah.
What's your name? Zach. Is 116? Okay, please proceed, miss.
Okay, my name is Gail Black. I'm from Plainville, Connecticut. I grew up in Canaan, and I spent all my childhood in the woods. And there wasn't any electronic stuff, but my sister has, she still lives there, and she has a lot of bear that come. And what they do is they have a horn and they blow it when the big boys come around. Big Bob is what they called him. And she got enclosed in the garage one day, and Bob came in, and she had to wait for him to back out because he was too big to turn around. So when she got out, she saw there was 2 young cubs, and they just ran off. But they haven't given her any trouble. She quietly yells, she doesn't yell at them, but speaks to them. And one of the neighbors is going to put a fence up around her in-ground pool. So just so the bear don't go in. It just, this gentleman was talking about memories. My memory is hanging out in the woods all the time. And it would bum me to walk through the woods and see some piece of an animal dead on the ground, like a bear, something that big. I don't know. They're just, I don't know. Has anybody thought of spaying or neutering them? I don't know if anybody has even thought about or looking into it to see if it can be done instead of shooting them. With the street that she lives on is narrow, and I'd be afraid of a bullet going off. And if I was at her house and I had a gun, I wouldn't want to think of shooting a bear. I'd be like aiming at the person shooting. I guess I'm not a shooter. I don't own a gun, but I just don't like shooting animals. I was watching TV the other night, and there's, I guess, for people who work out in the woods, there's special classes, and you can actually get on the ground, and they teach you how to react if a bear is going to attack you. But like others have said, what you really need to do is put your garbage away, put the bird feeders away. And, you know, that's one thing. And then also you can just keep everything away that they're not going to get into. Make sure you lock your doors, lock your car doors. People think that they own the world, and they don't. I know a lot of people like to hunt, but I don't know if it's true. I heard that bears carry trichinosis, so that's not a good thing if you're going to eat that. And just one other thing. I just want to say that in regards to Connecticut, I think it has bad pollution, air pollution, because I'm on my 4th cat with asthma since 2000. That's all I want to say.
All right, thank you very much. So, wait, any questions? Representative Cooley? Ma'am, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank you for coming in.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me speak.
No
Our
problem.
pleasure.
And for the record, we are considering expanding the hunting to various things, but not to hunting humans. That is still off the table. So next, Anna McMonigal.
I'm sorry. Sam. I had 116 Stephen Sack that you'd mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
just
I
had a
got it.
bad- I apologize. Yeah, I didn't
No.
mean to interrupt.
I'm alternating. Anna McMonigal. Which may be a moot point. Anna McMonigal. Miss McMonigal. All right. Mr. Sack.
Thank you, committee. I know it's a late night, not as late as we've been here some nights, but not too bad. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm going to keep this short here. I'm here to oppose Bill 1147. My name is Stephen Sack. I own a wholesale energy company here in the Hartford area. I'm a 5th generation in the energy business. And I want to oppose Bill 1147 and act concerning environmental justice programs of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. This bill is very broad and it hits many parts of our industry that is going to have negative effects on carbon reduction. DEEP is looking to add more and more layers to permits and more scrutiny of other groups who may not understand the full aspects of the energy needs of Connecticut and what it takes to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And when simply if I own a terminal and I want to install some more tanks to put biodiesel blending in to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and right now we're doing a lot of that. And every gallon of biodiesel we put in to replace heating oil, it's about an 80% reduction in carbon emissions. And this is going to potentially prevent that from happening. The state needs a boutique of clean energy sources, and this has a high potential of stopping a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and a very cost-effective way for citizens in the state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. When they talk about in New Haven with the oil terminals down there, well, it's storage tanks. It's not emitting emissions. It's just storing fuel. Is there smell sometimes on the bridge? I've heard. Yeah, when I come across that bridge sometimes during the summer, what you're smelling is asphalt oil being heated up during the summertime, but it's not polluting emissions. It has a smell to it, but it's not being burnt, so there's no emissions. That fuel is then being distributed throughout the entire state. So it's not just affecting an environmental justice area, it's affecting the entire state if this was to be put in there. So going through where they have normally the major ports, which are in the bigger cities where the fuel comes in, it's not going to, this is going to prevent ways for our industry to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And there's no real pollution going on at these facilities. And so for those reasons, I oppose Bill 1147. Any questions? Thank you.
Perfect, with 10 seconds to spare.
All right.
Any questions from Mr. Sack? Yes.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was just wondering about the supply of biodiesel. What does that look like for the near future?
It looks great. We have the largest biodiesel production facility on the East Coast right here in New Haven, Connecticut. And we use a lot of that fuel that's made right here in Connecticut. We also import whatever else they can't produce. But we're not having any issues getting supply, as it's a worldwide commodity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds good. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, this strange looking man, Santa Claus. Mr. Gresco.
Just a quick question for Steve concerning the biodiesel. Since the law was passed and the blend started to go into effect, how much more of an increase in use in the state of Connecticut have you seen?
It has gone up. Prior to the law, there was no mandate on biodiesel. Now 5% minimum of all heating oil is blended with biodiesel. Our company ourselves, we are blending more than a 5% blend. So I can't give you exact numbers, but if you take the state's usage and take 5% minimum, that's the minimum amount that's going on. I think Connecticut's about 400 million gallons a year times 5%. But some dealers are blending higher than 5%. And with your guys' help here, we are going to be at a 50% blend by 2035.
Last question, Mr. Chairman, and is that higher blend than 5% mandate because customers are asking for it?
Not so much. Our industry is pushing for it more than anything. We want to be part of the solution here in Connecticut to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And so our industry itself is pushing for higher blends.
Thank you, Mr. Sack. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right, I see no further questions in or online. Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Sack was the last gentleman in the building that we know of who's going to testify. So we're mostly moving to remote now. I would even extend legislators here if you want to move to your office, which I'm probably going to do, and go remote from an office. And the Capitol Police have been they've working with us that if someone comes in the building into the room, I'll be notified and I'll come back down to the room and take their testimony in person. But for now, Representative Palm, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. I'm Christine Palm. I'm the Vice Chair of the Environment Committee, and I will be flying the plane while our chairs take a bit of a break. So we're up to Mr. Jason Sewell, number 47. Jason Sewell. Are you online, sir? I'm going to call, what I'll do, folks, is call your name a couple of times. If you miss your chance for the folks online, we're going to have to ask you to probably go to the end of the line since so many others have been waiting. So Jason Sewell for the last time. Okay, then we're moving on to Peter Brennan, followed by Lee Hoffman. Peter Brennan, are you online, sir? There you are.
Mr. Palm, I'm here.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for having me. My name is Peter Brennan. I'm the Executive Director of the New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association. I'm here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill, raised Bill 1145, an act concerning the establishment of sector-specific subtargets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, regulating emissions of small off-road engines. I'd like to start off my testimony by saying that at halftime, UConn 38, Marquette 38. Looks like a tough, tight game. Let's all get out of here and go Huskies. But we oppose this bill. We oppose it, and I'll be brief because it's a power grab by Deep. The proposals that they envision with this legislation should go through the legislature. They contemplate in this legislation entering into agreements, carbon tax agreements, TCI, cap and trade, things of that nature. These things need to go through the hearing process. They shouldn't come at your constituents, at you, or at my members with in the form of regulations that are just promulgated that really have very little chance for affected industries, constituents, or legislators to weigh in on. I'm not sure why at this stage DEEP is taking this action and that they now want to assume this responsibility. But I think that the proper place for these policies is in the legislature. And that's really the main crux of our opposition. I would be happy to take questions. It just seems that anything that DEEP wants all this new power, anything they do with it is going to raise costs on our consumers, your constituents, anybody in the state, and they want to do it without getting legislative approval first. And that's pretty much the whole point of 1145. So we oppose it. I'm happy to take questions. I'll be here as long as you are, and I appreciate everybody sticking with the hearing as long as we have.
I don't see any questions from committee members, but could you please just restate what NEC-SEMA stands for the record?
So it's the New England Convenience Store and Energy Marketers Association.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And my name is Peter Brennan.
Yeah. Any questions from the committee? All right, thank you. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to Lee Hoffman, followed by Sean Mooney. Mr. Hoffman, are you here?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, great. So thank you, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Lee Hoffman. I'm an attorney at Pullman and Comley. I've been working in environmental law for nearly 30 years, and I'm the immediate past chair of the Connecticut Bar Association's environmental section. I'm here to oppose bills number 1145 and 1147. The aim of both of these bills is laudable, namely the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the support of environmental justice initiatives. Connecticut has long been a leader in both of these initiatives, and it should be proud of that legacy. But no matter how well-intentioned these bills may be, there are unintended consequences that also must be weighed and considered. The bills as written have the very real possibility of harming the communities that they're designed to protect and may not even get us closer to our environmental goals. First and foremost, the bills, when taken together, will have the unintended consequence of stymieing the environmental innovation that they seek. The bills affect not only new facilities, they also affect facilities that may be seeking to expand or improve their operations. Such expansions may, for example, come in the form of modernization of older facilities and concomitant improvements in emission controls, but those will be stymied the way the bills are currently written. The bills do make some limited exceptions for such treatments, but those exceptions are incomplete at best. A facility, for example, that more than doubles its capacity while only increasing its emissions by 10% would still be subject to all the requirements of new regulation, despite the fact that pollution on a per unit of production basis would be half of what it would have been before the improvements were undertaken. Similarly, a facility that undertakes improvements to radically reduce its greenhouse gas emissions while increasing another emission of another pollutant slightly is also going to be subject to regulation, no matter how small that increase is. The reaction of the regulated community, in my opinion, to this turn of events can be reasonably anticipated. The regulated community, rather than seeking to make these improvements, is simply going to stand on the sideline and allow for their existing infrastructure to remain in place and not seek any improvements and not seek any additional improvements. Instead of fostering a culture of environmental innovation, we're really just going to keep ourselves stagnant where we are. In addition to impacting the people who live around those facilities who won't see improvements, the bills are going to impact the communities in another way. These bills broaden the industries that are going to be impacted by their requirements, including sewage treatment plants, bulk petroleum facilities, and pipelines. These facilities, should they choose to go through the additional permit process, will pass those costs on to their ratepayers and the consumers. That means that people who live in cities with aging sewage infrastructure are going to pay more for their sewage treatment rates. And people who can't afford high-tech transportation are going to pay more for their gasoline. It's not the Tesla drivers who will bear the brunt of this. It's common folks and ratepayers who will. I'm happy to take any questions, and I did submit written testimony. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Attorney Hoffman. We have a couple of questions. Chair Gresco, followed by Rep. Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, Lee, is give me a scenario of what you mean, or would you agree with this scenario? Let's say a coal plant that has been decommissioned along a waterfront on Long Island Sound. If it is demolished and something of a battery storage facility is thought to go into that area, this bill would basically prohibit that in its current form.
Well, it wouldn't prohibit it, Mr. Chairman, but it would force those same the regulations to incur. And there has been loose talk here about mandating the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to prohibit those things, but the bill as currently written wouldn't do that. But what it would do is, Mr. Sack raises an excellent point. It is going to make it far more difficult to convert additional tanks to biodiesel. It's going to make it more difficult for sewage treatment plants to clean up and get rid of combined sewer overflows. And as we look at that, it's going to be a real problem. And the other thing that I'll point out, as we're looking at dealing with greenhouse gas emissions, as I put in my written testimony, just be aware that ISO New England presented to the Rhode Island Environment and Agriculture Committee this time last year their analysis that if the 5 states that now have zero carbon goals achieve those goals, we need twice the electric infrastructure, both in generation and transmission, that we currently possess. So we're going to be building more facilities. And where those facilities are going to get built is anybody's guess, but they're going to be all over New England.
Thank you, Lee, for thank you, Attorney Hoffman, for the perspective. Always appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Rep. Dubitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Lee. Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
The scenario you laid out is not a good one, but it is also not a surprise. I get you say you've submitted written testimony. Does that written testimony happen to propose any type of alternative?
It doesn't propose specific alternatives, Representative Dubitsky. I would imagine, as with most of the sausage that gets made during the springtime in Connecticut, there's going to be a fair bit of back and forth on this. I'm happy to provide the committee with some suggested language, but I also didn't feel as though I wanted to overstep my bounds. There's a lot of people looking at this. I do believe that one has to take a look at some of on the environmental justice piece, one has to take a look at some of the more onerous requirements, such as a mailer to every residence in a half-mile radius of any facility. If you're doing that near an apartment complex, that's an awful lot of mail, which may or may not be particularly a useful method of communication. I don't have any clients that have problems with doing community outreach, but broad community outreach doesn't necessarily involve mailers, although I do agree that we need to modernize things a bit with the internet, et cetera, with all deference to traditional print journalism. With respect to with respect to the greenhouse gas emissions controls, I do think that it's interesting to me that the bill targets those industries that the department, I believe, appears to think are tipping the scales against Connecticut going to a zero carbon future. And Lord knows that I do enough work to propose going to a zero carbon future. I believe in the value of renewable energy and energy storage, but I also believe that if we go too fast, that ISO New England report, which I linked to in my written testimony, frightened me because we quite literally, as we put our building envelopes on electric and our transportation on electric, as well as our generation on electric, we have to double our current capacity to both generate the electricity and distribute it. And we have to do so while we're retiring old units such as Millstone and the large fossil fuel generators that we currently have. That's a very tall order to do in a very short period of time.
Well, tall order is putting it mildly. Many of us feel it's completely unrealistic, and that if we retire too much of the existing infrastructure and demand on the use side a lot of electrical consumption without anything to replace the current production, we're going to be in very, very bad shape. And I think we need to really look at that. And, you know, if there's any suggestions that you might be able to provide, you know, I'm not going to ask you to, you know, do tons and tons of work on it, but if you could give us some, you know, some insight and some suggestions on alternatives that might be more realistic, it would certainly be helpful.
Happy to provide that, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, folks. I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Attorney Hoffman. Moving on, we're going to go to Sean Mooney, followed by Bobby Callaghy. Sean Mooney, are you online, please, sir? No? All right, then I guess we're next we're going to go to Bobby Callaghy.
I'm here to strongly support Bill HB 6814. My name is Bobby Callaghy. I'm a high schooler. I live in Darien, and I'm here to share concerns on behalf of my generation and future generations. We are worried. We are worried about our futures. We're concerned about our safety, and better yet, we don't know if we will have a clean and healthy planet to live on. Luckily, people say that I'm fortunate enough to be born in a time and place where everyone is told to dream big. People say I could do whatever I wanted to. They said I could live wherever I wanted to. And adults say that we have everything we needed and more. Things our grandparents could never have dreamed of. While that may be true now, it's not going to be the case in the future. I sit here in my room on a Friday evening testifying to fight for our future. I should be worried about math or reading The Great Gatsby in English, yet I'm here. These next few years will be an indicator of whether we avert a climate disaster or not. As kids, we beg you to do something. We need actionable change. While this bill won't change climate change forever, it is a step forward, a promise to our generation that you care. Bill HB 6814 was an idea that I had months ago, and I approached a member of this committee with the idea. They did an amazing job and helped me shape the bill into what it is today. Right now, hardly anyone can use the existing system, and you, as my elected senators and representatives, can fix this. Just as you deserve a healthy future, we do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. It was a pleasure to work with you on this bill. I have a couple of questions. If you've been watching some of the testimony earlier, there was Mr. Felton from Ameripen, and I held up a series of pieces of plastic. I don't know if you were watching then. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any idea what PP20D5 and PETE5 and PEAT1 and F3 chasing arrows, and then curly arrow not chasing, and then PEAT5 in a triangle? Does that make any sense to you at all?
No, not at all.
And yet you did what I understand is a considerable amount of research before you pitched this idea.
Yeah, for any consumer, I don't think it makes sense.
Do you okay, so that was my next question. If you're confused and I'm confused, it's pretty safe to say most of the consumers are confused, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was your impetus in working on this idea instead of reading The Great Gatsby, which, by the way, you should read? Fabulous book.
I think that my generation, I'm concerned about climate change, and I think that we need to take initiative as younger generations and older generations to work collaboratively to some sort of solution. And while this doesn't obviously address climate change as a whole, it's a step forward and a precedent that we can set for the state government and for national government. And I think that my mom, for example, who basically is in the kitchen 24/7 with us, can barely tell and kind of is baffled at times what is and isn't recyclable. So oftentimes she's trying to like look up whether she's throwing something away. So from those experiences, I've kind of like found that it's incredibly difficult for like a regular consumer to figure out what is and isn't recyclable or compostable for that matter, when they're just trying to get rid of their waste.
And what do you say to the criticism that this is not a state initiative, but it should be a national one?
So I totally agree with that sentiment that it should be a national initiative, but currently obviously there isn't one. So I think that we need to take initiative as a state to set the precedent, and then hopefully that leads into national action. But I think that just waiting longer and longer is really unsettling for my generation, for future generations, and it just does not set a good precedent for others as well.
I have one more question, Bobby, and then I see Rep. Rader has her hand up. Part of this bill has to do with incentivizing, if that's a correct word, quasi-public agencies, municipalities, regional councils of governments, nonprofit organizations, and private entities to get away from fossil fuel-based plastics and into alternatives. Do you have any opinion about the possible economic nature of this, or what entrepreneurs might think of this?
Yeah, so I definitely think that there are effective bioplastic substitutes to current plastic that's used. I know like one offhand is called PHA, and it's basically it's not an exact replica, but very, very similar to plastic. And I know for a fact that actually recently in an entrepreneurship competition that I took place in at my school, that two girls that had been developing some sort of bioplastic were trying to create innovative bioplastics that would harden. So there is a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship that's taking place. And I think that if we embrace that as a state, it can provide a lot of economic incentive and innovation to the state and maybe to possibly the country. So
I think that's a great point. Thank you for that, Bobby. Rep. Rader, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Bobby. Welcome to testifying at the committee tonight. I really appreciate you hanging on while we listen to all the other testimony. I am so encouraged by someone like you. And I wanted to ask you, where do you feel the education around your concept? Do you feel that I want to age myself, but your generation currently is very cognizant of labeling on packaging and the recycling labeling, or do you think that it's something that's more specific to maybe, I'm just curious to know, like, if this effort were to go forward, do you feel like teens and early 20s that they even currently pay attention to those kind of labelings and that concern that you have?
Yeah, so I think that the nice thing about my generation is that I feel like people are more socially aware of these topics. And so I think that there is more of an effort to try to either recycle or compost. And I know at least in my school, there's been a giant effort to implement composting and recycling. So I think that this kind of labeling curbs that effort and makes it much harder for us to partake. So yeah, I definitely think that our generation, future generations will probably be concerned, as there seems like a trend for people to be more socially aware about these issues.
Great. And do you attend, I'm just curious, do you attend a public school?
Yeah, so I go to, well, I don't attend public school, but my sisters do. I go to the master's school, but two of my sisters go to Darien High School, which is where the initiative was happening, and then also my school as well.
I'm so curious. So I know so I live down in Guilford, and the high school offers an environmental science class. It's a EC, class, but have you guys had those opportunities in school?
Yeah, we've had some opportunities for environmental science, and I know that there's a lot of clubs that are forming more recently and also in the past that are kind of trying to make that effort. And I know as a town, like I've been kind of trying to be a forefront runner and getting Darien to compost, which has been difficult, but there's definitely been some strides.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you for attending the hearing. I loved hearing your idea and your bill concept. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done.
Thank you, Rep. Rader. Seeing no other questions, we're going to move on. Thank you, Bobby, for coming with us tonight. We have Michael Beebe, followed by Amy Blaymore Patterson. Mr. Beebe, are you still online with us? I do not see him, but I do see Amy Blaymore Patterson. Oh, and go ahead, Amy. And then I see Michael Stepsky has a hand up, but But why don't we go ahead and hear from Amy Blaymore Patterson, please? Amy, you need to unmute.
Got it. Now can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Terrific. Thank you, Representative Palm, Senator Lopes, Representative Gresco, and distinguished members of the Environment Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to present testimony. For the record, I'm Amy Blaymore Patterson. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. CLCC submitted written testimony on a number of bills. I'll use my time to underscore our support for 3 of them that recognize the value of natural and working lands in protecting our environment and advancing efforts to mitigate against the impacts of climate change. Regarding SB 1146, Sections 10 and 11 propose a technical correction to the statute authorizing the Open Space and Watershed Land Acquisition Grant Program, or OSWA. OSWA is a matching grants program and an essential source of funding for land trusts, municipalities, and water companies to assist with the purchase of open space in communities across the state. I serve as co-chair of the State Natural Heritage Open Space and Watershed Land Acquisition Review Board, which provides oversight of DEEP's open space funding programs, including OSWA. One of our responsibilities is to evaluate and make recommendations regarding improvements to the efficiency and efficacy of OSWA. In addition, at CLCC, we regularly assist and advise land trusts on their OSWA grant projects and have unique insight into administrative obstacles that might slow down the closing process. One of those obstacles involves the layering of the OSWA easement with other, sometimes multiple easements in favor of federal, municipal, and/or private entities that supply match dollars to assist applicants in purchasing the property. Questions around the timing and order of the recording of the respective easements can complicate and slow down the closing process for a project. So to fix this issue, the Review Board, DEEP's Land and Acquisition Management Office staff, with input from the Attorney General's office, worked together to recommend the technical revisions set forth in sections 10 and 11. These revisions are technical in nature, they're non-controversial, and provide clarity in the statute on how an OSWA applicant may effectively combine the state grant with non-state match funding to purchase open space or conservation easements. Regarding SB 1145, which appears to be misfiled under my testimony under SB 1146, I'll make sure that's corrected. As Commissioner Dykes alluded to in her testimony today, working in natural lands and land use practices are important tools in absorbing and storing carbon and other greenhouse gases that contribute to the changing climate. We limited our testimony in support of sections 2 through 4 and 7, which serve to recognize the value of nature-based climate solutions by accounting for negative emissions and meeting the state's targets for carbon neutrality. Finally, I want to support HB 6809 and the concept of incentivizing streamside buffers using conservation easements as a protection tool. In addition to helping to keep water clean, preventing erosion and other benefits, streamside buffers are also a natural climate solution. I'd welcome the opportunity to work with the committee in filling in some of the details regarding the conservation easement process to help move this concept forward. Thank you for this opportunity and for your persistence tonight in getting through this hearing and for all you do.
Thank you, Amy. I see that Chair Gresco has his hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Amy, for waiting it out with us. Just a quick question and maybe an update. Where is the state as far as attaining our open space goal, and how do you think these technical corrections in 1140, yeah, they're all merging together, 46 helps us out?
Well, we're about, I mean, collectively, the state goal is 21%. And 21% of the state's land area to be conserved. And right now we are pushing 76% of that goal. And that goal, of course, consists of 10% by being conserved by DEEP and 11% by the partners. It's the partners that take advantage of this open space funding source. And they are key to the state meeting the state goals. Of course, we're not going to meet them by 2023. We're there now. We've got a long way to go. In fact, some of the estimates say 65 years or more to get there at the current pace. So this fix would really help to accelerate the process by giving land trusts, municipalities, and the water companies that take advantage of the open space grant program an opportunity to move their projects faster. It is, again, it's a technical fix. It is non-controversial, and it's one that the Attorney General's office had agreed is necessary in order to increase the pace of these closings.
Thank you, Amy. Always great working with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the question, Representative, and for all you do to help us.
Seeing no further questions, I'm going to move on. We're going to circle back to Michael Stepsky, who was waiting in the room earlier, followed by Kim Libera. I see Kim is ready. Michael Stepsky, if you can unmute yourself and turn your camera on. There you are. Go ahead, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks so much for the second chance. I was on the highway in the first time and trying to switch lanes and answer the thing, but
No, don't do that. We're glad you're safe. Go ahead.
I got to say, when we all go to restaurants, both tourists and locals alike, everyone wants fresh and local seafood, and that's what we supply. The few of us that are left doing this, I started fishing with my father years ago. I've been fishing my entire life. That's all I've ever done. All three of my children fish with me. They work the deck. My daughter's going for her captain's license right now. We're trying to keep this career going, but it's so uncertain with bills like this. These type of bills just make the uncertainty. There should be a career opportunity because everything has, people are part of the food chain. Even like with the bear thing, we've been hearing about bears all day. Everything has a certain take limit. We can harvest wildlife and seafood sustainably. And that's what we do. We are very sustainable in this state in particular. The DEP has been great. We work together. They, we make sure the bycatch issue is down. We have mesh size restrictions, seasonal restrictions. I think we're one of the most restricted businesses in the country, to tell you the truth. We're probably right up there with nuclear, but this bill refers to emissions and bycatch, that's been taken care of decades ago. I'm dragging a net with a 6-inch hole. All the small fish go right through it. We don't have to measure our fish. They're so big that they're all keepers. We have a small mesh season for squid, where we catch the squid for a month and a half, and then we have the large mesh, which is the cleanest fishery in the world, and we have huge, healthy fisheries here. I mean, you wouldn't believe the fish that just come through here, and it's our chance to catch them and provide them to the people, to the public. As sport fishermen, they want it all to themselves, but those of us that have a commercial fishing boat, we're supplying that to the public, to the restaurants, to the local community. When tourists come into town, when everyone comes into the shoreline, they want something local. You don't want to eat a fillet of tilapia that was raised under a chicken coop, or something like that. You want the local scallops and the flounder and all the good stuff that we catch.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Your time is up. Can you summarize, please? Thank you.
Well, I can't stress enough how devastating this bill would be, not only to our livelihood, but, we're all multi-generational businesses. And, I hate to see the public's access to seafood go away and my children's future go away. They love it like I do. It's in our blood, and it's like a farm, it's multi-generational businesses. This bill would absolutely devastate us, and there'd be nothing left, everything will be imported. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rep. Baumgartner has his hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mike, it's great to see you. I know you were up here waiting for long hours earlier, and just want to thank you for taking the time to be up here with Tom. And really taking away from your own day out on the sea. So, we heard earlier from Joe Gilbert from Empire Fisheries describe the impact to his business, and heard some stories about how we can actually work with science as well. And so my question to you is, what are you explained that the fishery is healthier than ever, and in conversations with Joe, learned that they've used cameras on the back of their, and their trawlers to really see some of the, the incredible aquatic life, and partnering with our research universities. Do you stand ready to work with our scientists so that they can get a better sense of what's happening in our Long Island Sound? Since you're
We have always hoped to do that more and more. We see the survey boats come in and, fish move in huge patterns, and, fishermen have a way of finding them. We try over here, we try over there, we try over there, but every year we see the survey boat come in and they make the exact same little 20-minute tow, and then they just do their math by that. And I'm like, there's no fish over there right now, but there's tons of them over here. There's a few of us making a living on them every day. You really got to spend a lot of time out there to really know what's going on. And fishermen should be completely involved in any of the decision making and any of the data that's being collected. The more that we work together, the better, without a doubt.
Well, you're preaching to the choir, Mike, and I appreciate everything you do for the fishing community in our corner of the state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stepsky. I don't see any other questions. We're going to move on to Kim Libera, who I see has been waiting patiently, followed by Joan Nichols, who was in person in the LOB. I don't know if Joan is still online or not, but Kim, why don't you go ahead? You have 3 minutes. Oh, there's Joan. So first Kim, then Joan. Thank you.
My name is Kim Libera. I have a master's in earth science and a good foundation in ecology. I do oppose the trophy hunting of mammals because I sense it is just designed for convenience and revenue. And I wish we could coexist better in our state because you don't get a chance to see wildlife as much as, say, if you live near Yellowstone Park. So we have to develop more resilience. I do, however, have some suggestions and compromise language on the bill. As I have in the past, I do oppose neutering and relocation of male animals and use the military if you have to. I do think that homeowners should have access to a green bank to secure materials to enhance their security of their properties. I would give latitude to homeowners to defend themselves and their family and any of their animals, including bees. I raise bees. Should there be some kind of confrontation that is actually gonna pan out there. I do have a suggestion. I know there's a food waste issue in the state, and I wonder why food waste can't be scooped up from restaurants by courier, transported to someplace in the county, and then assigned to a DEP ranger to transport by golf cart or by a drone to places in the wilderness, meadows, the woods, whatever, and planted there in order to deter some of these animals from coming closer to residences. And I would note, in the fall, I spend a lot of time up at Stratton Brook Park in Simsbury because I coach cross country and we make visits there. For the first time in 13 years, we saw a bear, a mother and her 2 cubs came through in a cross country meet. Nobody panicked. She went on her way up and down the switchbacks. Nobody ran for their cars. They just took pictures. But in the number of times that I've been up there, what I know is that the woods are very dense. There is, so a lot of times when people are bear counting, it's possible it could be the same bear. I do know that loud noises do work. When I have run at the Grand Canyon, the animals do not come out because they sense vibrations, and that keeps them on alert. And I just want to wrap up, just because the idea of plastics has come up today, is to reduce the amount of plastic. Maybe we should be considering things like the flax plant or jute to be used as ways of preserving food and whatnot, because not all plastics are biodegradable, nor are they recyclable.
Thank you,
And that
Ms.
is my
Laguerre. Perfect timing. And I think you win the prize for having the most unusual and outside the box suggestion that we've heard yet. So I appreciate the way you think and you're being with us. I don't see any questions. Let me just check the rest of the committee. No, I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. Joan Nichols, I see you on there. Joan, you are next. And we'll be followed by Michelle Cooper. Michelle, if you are still here with us, please get yourself ready. Go ahead, Joan, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Lopez and Gresco, Vice Chairs Hockadell and Palm, and members of the Environment Committee. My name is Joan Nichols. I'm the Executive Director for Connecticut Farm Bureau Association, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 1148. Connecticut Farm Bureau urges your support of Senate Bill 1148, which establishes a permitting program through the Connecticut Deep for the taking of wildlife that threatens or causes damage to agricultural crops, livestock, or apiaries. In recent years, Connecticut farmers have seen an exponential loss due to wildlife. Coyotes have always been a threat to livestock and poultry. In recent years, bobcat and black bear populations have increased and are now as much of a threat to livestock and poultry as coyotes. The average beehive costs $300. Beekeepers must now install electric fencing to protect the hives. There's an additional $1,000 to $1,500 cost to install and maintain the fencing. When a bear destroys a beehive, it's not only the loss of the hive, but it's also a loss of the revenue from the honey and the cost to replace the hive and the damaged fencing. Loss of sheep and goats can be as upwards of $300 an animal. A calf can be as much as $1,000 an animal. The loss of a full-size mature turkey can be $50 to $100. That's significant losses to our farmers. When livestock is attacked by wildlife, the farmer not only incurs the cost of the loss of the animal, but also the veterinary care if the injured animal survives the trauma. Traumatized livestock often lose production and have their feeding schedules interrupted. Additional losses are incurred in damaged and destroyed fencing structures and crops. Bear and coyote are more recently seen destroying corn crops by raiding the corn and knocking over the stalks. Once wildlife become familiar with access to crops, livestock, bees, and poultry, they keep returning despite the best efforts of our farmers to deter their activity. Farmers understand they need to live with wildlife. They work tirelessly to strengthen their fencing and infrastructure as much as humanly possible, but there are occasions when a farmer needs to take legal action to expend wildlife to protect their livestock, bees, poultry, crops, and livelihood. The last suggestion I would like to make is, in addition to the passage of Senate Bill 1148, would be to amend our animal control laws so that the barking from livestock guardian dogs is exempt from nuisance complaints. When a trained guardian livestock dog is barking, they are barking because there's an imminent, immediate threat from a predator to the livestock they are protecting. Current animal control laws consider a barking dog a nuisance, and there is no exemption or protection afforded a farmer when a neighbor complains about a barking guardian livestock dog. Exempting agriculture and livestock guardian dogs from nuisance complaints under state animal control laws would be another tool to help farmers protect their livestock against wildlife and would be less intrusive to native wildlife. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. It's my understanding that a farmer already has the ability to defend a flock. Do you know of examples of instances where a farmer shot a bear or a coyote and then was punished legally for doing so?
I'm going to be totally honest with you. As the executive director of a general agricultural organization, I need to know a little bit about everything. What the farmers have said to us, and they generally will not ask for a law to be changed or a new law unless they really feel they need it. Apparently, whatever the current laws are not enough, and whether the farmer takes an animal and is protected under the current laws, or they feel that there needs to be an amendment of laws to protect the farmers further, I believe is why they're asking. I'd be happy to explore this further and answer that question for you. But apparently there's something in the laws that the farmers feel they would really prefer to have this type of permitting process through DEEP.
Well, I think it's a very important question, and I think I can speak on behalf of the leadership of this committee in saying that we would love to hear further if you could find some sort of clarification of that. Chair Gresco, go ahead, please, followed by Rep. Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on that line of questioning, we did pass some legislation within the last couple of years that would allow a farmer a little bit more latitude in protecting their crops and livestock, but you based on what you just said, it didn't go far enough. And then you answered my other question in your testimony. Basically, I had mentioned before, what about the possibility of having the ability to defend your crops and livestock, but firing a warning shot first, kind of thing. But you're saying that as soon as you go back in the house, they're going to be back based on your experience with deterrence.
Yeah, and it may very well be that there are allowable laws for coyotes. I suspect that what the farmers are dealing more and more with are bobcats and bear that may not be currently covered under the current statutes. But again, I'd be happy to look into that further and get back to you.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Rep. Dubitsky, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Joan. I have represented clients who've had the dog situation where they have dogs that are trained and bred to protect livestock, and their neighbors complain like crazy because the dogs bark. And the whole point of the dogs barking is to protect the livestock from coyotes, bobcats, and other wildlife. In the instance that I'm thinking about, the farmers raised goats, and they had little tiny baby goats, and just about anything can kill a baby goat. Even raccoons or fisher cats, or just about anything can kill a baby goat. But with these dogs, the dogs protected the goats, and they were constantly getting complaints that the dogs are barking. That's the whole point. They're trained to bark. But going to the killing of the animals with regard to crop damage, the state does issue crop damage wildlife permits, but only for deer. The coyote season is open all year, and farmers or anybody else with a license can shoot coyotes at any time of the year. And it is done, certainly there are plenty of coyotes out there that are still doing damage to livestock. But going to the bear, my understanding is that a farmer can shoot a bear if it is engaged in attacking livestock. But if the farmer goes out and sees a injured or dead animal and sees a bear out in the woods, the farmer can't go and shoot the bear because there is no active attack going on. That's my understanding of how it's working. And I don't think that is sufficient to protect the livestock, because if the livestock is already attacked, there's really nothing the farmer can do. And in densely populated bear territory in the northwest corner, my guess is that the farmers are in a bad situation with the bear. Is that what you're hearing from your members?
Pretty much, Representative Dubitsky. I think you've explained it well. And once you have a nuisance bear, so to speak, or a bobcat, even if the bear wanders off a little bit, once it knows that it has access to livestock, no matter what the farmer does to shore up the fencing, or they've even had bears rip into little structures, whatever they try to do to keep the bear away, or the bobcat. Once the animal gets used to having access, it's almost impossible to keep them out.
Right. Well, I appreciate your coming in and testifying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Up next, we have Michelle Cooper, although I don't see her online, followed by Jason Levy, whom I do see. And after Mr. Levy, we have Aziz Decken. So Michelle Cooper, going once. Okay, Jason Levy, why don't you take it away, sir? And after you will be Aziz Decken.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Testifying in support of both the bear hunting bill and Sunday hunting. With regards to bear hunting, there seems to be a lot of folks who don't believe that we have a problem with bears. Welcome any of them to come hang out in my neighborhood in Simsbury, where multiple times a week, bears come up to my front door. Bears intercept my children and the group of children in the neighborhood walking to school. Bears interrupt playing outside after school. This isn't once in a while. This is every other day, every 3 days. My neighbors and I have the bear-proof cans. We don't leave attractants outside. We don't even live in what I would consider the woods. We live in a very well-developed neighborhood, and the bears have essentially moved in. I don't know why this is still an issue. The expert biologists that the state employs at DEP have been asking for the tools to address the bears for years, and we are still ignoring them. I thought we were supposed to be following the science. Our scientists are telling us we have a problem and we need this tool to fix it. So I would highly recommend we do that. As far as Sunday hunting goes, we are the only activity that is completely banned on one arbitrary day of the week. I don't buy the quote unquote safety concerns. We have an exceptional safety record in this state. We also fund a lot of the outdoors spaces that people enjoy, whether or not they hunt. That money comes from the Pittman-Robertson Act that we pay for through hunting licenses and purchasing of hunting equipment. If safety really is that big of a concern and we are really that much of a danger on Sunday, are hikers not in danger on Saturday? Maybe we could prohibit hiking on Saturdays and we could each have our own days. I don't think the hiking community would like that, and I don't think that would be fair to them. There's plenty of places in this state, more that is not huntable than is huntable. It is not fair that we spend all this money and we have less days to enjoy it than everybody else. The idea that we are a small minority and that we should be able to have less rights than everybody else is offensive. The idea that we are doing this for trophies is equally offensive. There are many people who feed their families off hunting. I don't know a single person who is out there simply trying to put something on the wall. We enjoy what we do, we feed our families, and we enjoy spending time with our families out in the woods hunting. It's a blue law. We are one of the 2 or 3 states that still have it. The states that have recently removed the restriction on Sunday hunting have not had an increase in hunting accidents.
Mr. Levy, thank you. If you're stopping there, that's timing is perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Rep Reyes, your hand went up and then down. I guess it's down. Any other questions from committee members? Yes, Rep. Anderson, go ahead, sir. You have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Levy, I'm sorry to hear about the problem you're having in your neighborhood. Do you think, do you have any ideas for solutions like archery hunting or something
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that?
bow hunting would be effective even in our suburban communities. You can hunt relatively close to developments, and you can help reduce the problem bear population. I really think that our DEP needs the tools they're asking for. They're asking for a feeding ordinance ban. They are asking for the ability to regulate a bear hunt. I do agree with them that it needs to be expanded to include the Farmington Valley because we're not in Litchfield County and we are bear capital of the world in Connecticut. And yeah, I mean, you know, we can either pass a bear hunt before someone gets killed or after.
And I hope it's not in Simsbury. Thank you, Mr. Levy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I would like to call on Dr. Regina Milano, followed by Bill Lucy, unless Bill went earlier. I know he was in the room. So let's take Regina Milano, please. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Dear distinguished members of the Environment Committee, I'm here to oppose SB 1148 bear hunting and oppose SB 1149 Sunday hunting. I'm a member of CWRA, Connecticut Votes for Animals, and the Connecticut Coalition for Bears to protect bears, but I speak here today on behalf of myself. I hold a master's degree in environmental biology. I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. A number of incidences around the bears have caused me to lose confidence in DEEP with regard to bears. I was a first responder when Bobby the bear was murdered in Newtown. I want to echo Representative Michelle's assertion of Mr. Hawley's overestimation of the weight of Bobby's cubs, Indra and Izzy, 11 and 13 pounds. I was the first person there that day, and I asked to work in cooperation with DEEP. Jason told me that they would make no efforts to help the cubs and that they were old enough and healthy enough to survive. 2 days prior, I was in the woods searching for the cubs when I learned that DEEP had threatened a cease and desist on our group for trying to help the cubs. They claimed to be in the woods looking for the bears. I was there. They were not. DEEP also failed to prosecute Bobby's killers despite overwhelming evidence, including violation of gun ordinances, tampering with evidence, and provocation. I heard a series of non-answers from DEEP today, particularly around DEEP's ability to count bears. I also heard a claim that other states don't want our bears, so let us have a bear rehab facility. They're not looking for tools, they're looking for a hunt. And as to why, I'm following the money. Connecticut doesn't need hunters. Winners and losers, hunters have 6 days a week. Non-hunters have 1 day of peace. SB 1149 would prevent my Sabbath prayer walks in the woods on Sundays for fear of being shot. Sunday hunting discriminates against my 1 day of religious practice. I feel safer in the midst of a bear than a hunter in the woods. Nuisance wildlife management, harvesting, culling, euthanasia, no. It's selective slaughter and definitely not merciful. So please call it what it is. If you want to make family memories, shoot at a target, not life. Shoot a camera. Our family is against violence and bullying, so we do not share the family experience of hunting. The integrity of words matters. The criteria for killing bears is listed in 3 separate documents already. We don't need a new bill to obscure those. An absence of human accountability characterizes accounts of human-bear interactions. Unprovoked negative bear encounters are very rare. My Ring Neighbor account proves that neighbors have antagonized and snuck up on bears. Our provocation may be deliberate or by our ignorance, but we must be accountable. Our state's own website correctly describes bears as timid and shy. They're in our midst because they are hungry, not habituated. Low nut yield and habitat destruction are responsible. There are many communities throughout the country that live harmoniously with bears, even when providing diversionary feeding stations. Bears
Professor, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please. Your time is
I
up.
will. Thank you. Bears prefer their own diet and will only visit these stations when necessary. Albert Schweitzer said, the thinking man must approve all cruel customs, no matter how deeply rooted in tradition and surrounded by a halo. When we have a choice, we must avoid bringing torment and injury into the life of another, even the lowliest creature. but to do so is to renounce our manhood and shoulder a guilt which nothing justifies. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions from any committee members. I appreciate your waiting all day, and thank you, Professor, for your testimony.
Thank you.
We are now going to go to, I believe Bill Lucy went earlier. I don't see him on here. Bill, if you are there.
I am.
You are there. All right.
Yes.
We are going to go to Bill Lucy, followed by Joseph Mills.
Okay, thank you to the entire Environment Committee for sticking with this long one. My name is Bill Lucy. I'm the Long Island Soundkeeper. I work with Save the Sound, and I'm here to support HB 6809, which is an act concerning financial incentives for certain streamside buffers. And those financial incentives, in my mind, can take a number of different avenues and come from a number of different sources. I do also want to note, this is something I don't usually see during these testimonies, is all the comments under this bill were in support. So I probably jinxed the situation, but it was really good to see unanimous consent on this, at least from those who chose to put in testimony. Why is the Soundkeeper concerned about what goes on in a river, say up in Simsbury or up in Litchfield County? It's because almost the entire state of Connecticut is a watershed to Long Island Sound. So what goes on in Connecticut across the landscape eventually ends up in the Sound, and that directly affects water quality, the health of the Sound, fishing, swimming, commercial fishing, all the activities that go on there. And riparian buffers are the best and first line of defense to protecting our waters. Shade in the summertime is becoming more and more important. There is all kinds of flood mitigation. If you have lawn fertilizers, dog feces, whatever flowing off the landscape, those buffer zones grab those nutrients and put them into vegetation growth. They're incredible bird habitat. A lot of birds will migrate up and down rivers through these riparian areas. They're pathways. They're cheap. They're there naturally. We should just protect them, restore them, enhance them. The current condition in the state is not good. I have looked at a new tool that was developed by DEEP and some other ones that give condition assessments on each watershed block in the state. And the green ones, the ones in good shape, are not the majority. We have a lot of work to do. So I really hope we take this opportunity to start looking at riparian buffers and get together with some of the stakeholders in the future and really work out some more details on this. This is a good start, but we are the only state in all of New England that does not have setbacks. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate, as always, your expertise. Representing 4 riparian towns, I couldn't agree with you more. And I know that our Gateway Commission does a good job of this sort of thing. I'm going to turn to Rep. Mashinsky, followed by Chair Gresko.
Thank you, Bill, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bill, for coming in to speak in behalf of this. If long hours ago, Commissioner Katie Dykes said that they didn't have testimony on the bill because they weren't sure which fund we were attempting to use to make the incentive payments. So if you're able to advise us on which fund would be a better fit, we could give the commissioner that information and make the bill more explicit. So I'd appreciate any advice that you could give us.
Yeah, I think originally we were looking at the green infrastructure set aside under the Clean Water Fund, which has been up to $5 million. That's typically for rain gardens, bioswales, things to permeable pavement to capture stormwater management. Mm-hmm. And so it seems logical we could use that as well for riparian buffers because it's the cheapest form of stormwater management. Yep. Those are typically tied to CSO abatement communities. That's been the policy for many years, and I understand why, because we 700 million to 1 billion gallons of wastewater comes from those combined systems into our waters every year. And DEEP's been spending a lot of years making that or improving that situation. There are resiliency funds, microgrid resiliency funds that were out there. This is all a resiliency measure as well. I just had a meeting with the Long Island Sound Council through Senator Murphy's office today. And we understand that FEMA is now talking with NIFWIF, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which does a lot of the restoration funding and dam removals and that sort of nature-based solution work with the Long Island Sound study. And I do know that Senator Murphy has just increased the preventative budget of FEMA from, I think it was 2% to 6%. So that's work you do before the storm hits, and then you spend all these billions after the disaster. So it's to avoid the damage in the first place. So there may be, we brought up this idea of buffers and these conservation easements, and maybe it'd be really good to get a conduit for some of this federal money. And start getting in the habit of protecting our stream buffers. So there's a few options, Mary.
Okay, if you put those in writing and send them to one of us, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I will do that.
Especially if you know of a angle with the federal money, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
You all set, Brett Muszynski?
Yep.
Okay, the eminent chair, Joseph Gresco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Bill, what's the answer to you're letting this stuff grow is going to obstruct my view of the river? When?
Yes, that's why these things get mowed apart, right? I've seen all kinds of people mowing the grass right down to the edge. And that's exactly the type of thing we don't want to occur. So I think the idea of going the incentive route instead of a mandatory setback at this point is to take some watersheds that are undergoing a lot of restoration, maybe have some nitrogen pollution modeling already done, like the Pawtucket with the Nature Conservancy, and there's some other watershed groups. And let's do a pilot program and see what it looks like when a good number of neighbors get together. They get a small financial incentive for not mowing right up to the banks. And then maybe people start getting a different opinion of what an aesthetic is. I think it's just going to be an education process. What's more important, your view or the health of the water? And that's an ongoing lesson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, friends, the good news is we're halfway through, and the bad news is we're halfway through. So I'm going to call up next Joseph Mills, followed by Keith Cagle. Mr. Mills, are you still with us? And again, forgive me, folks, some of these people may have testified earlier in person. Okay, skipping Joseph Mills, going to Keith Cagle, followed by Jonah Lepar. Cagle, are you here? Keith Cagle? No? Okay. Jonah Lepar, are you here? High school?
Hi.
Yeah, there you are. Hi, Jonah. Go ahead. 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jonah Lepar, and I'm a high school student in Simsbury. Today, I would like to testify strongly in favor of Committee Bill 5214, an act concerning the conservation of certain waters and lands of the Upper Farmington River. This bill would require that the State Environmental Commissioner submit a report before next February, laying the foundation for a conservation plan for the Upper Farmington River, which is designated as a National Wild and Scenic River in its watershed, specifically for the possibility that the large portion of the land in the area now owned by the NBC for the purpose of providing public water supply be abandoned and no longer protected. My one suggestion for this bill would be that it be expanded further to cover all of the land in the Upper Farmington River watershed, not just the land owned by the NBC. Protecting the land in this area, which includes much of the towns of Barkhamsted, New Hartford, Colebrook, and others, would have countless benefits for communities in the area and the environment. In terms of economic benefits, preserving the land around the Upper Farmington River would help reduce flooding and erosion, potentially eliminating the need for costly measures to fix these problems. Preserving the area would also help secure the future of the tourism industry in the region, which generates thousands of dollars per year for the local communities. This brings me into my next point, which is the recreational benefits of preserving the river. The Farmington River itself offers many recreational opportunities, including canoeing, rowing, whitewater rafting, tubing in places like New Hartford, and kayaking and paddleboarding in places like Collinsville. This is not to mention the many recreational opportunities in the lands around the river, which preserving the region, which, as the bill states, is one of the state's largest remaining contiguous blocks of forested open space would protect, such as hiking and mountain biking in places such as Peoples and Nepog State Forest. Preserving the area would also ensure that all communities along the river have access to clean water and would maintain a healthy flow, temperature, and water quality in the river, securing habitat for the many species that live in it and rely on it, such as fish, turtles, mussels, herons, and bald eagles. Preserving the area around the river would also directly provide habitat for many woodland creatures that live in the forested region, such as bears, coyotes, deer, and many species of birds and small mammals. I personally live in a town that the Farmington River flows through, so I can attest how significant it is to the local environment and people. Thank you.
Jonah, thank you for your excellent testimony and for your engagement. It's always so happy. We're always so happy to hear from high school kids. Rep. Anderson, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Jonah, for your testimony. We're watching the situation closely. I know there are issues, severe issues with the water flow last summer when there was water in Colebrook Reservoir and the river was extremely low. So we're hoping to address things like that. Thank you very much, Jonah. No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Anderson. I don't see any other questions. Jonah, I just wanted to ask you what got you involved in testifying? What impelled you to come before us today?
I just wanted to, well, my mom was originally, she told me about it, and I thought it'd be a good way to just help like protect the environment around like the land, because I like being outdoors a lot, like hiking and biking. So it'd be a good way to like help protect like nature and just the land around me.
Thank you. Thank you for doing something about your concerns. We need more folks like you. Okay, next, I don't see any other questions. Thank you. Thank you, Jonah.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Joanne Basile. Joanne, thank you. I know you were in person today for a very long time. Appreciate that. Followed by Francis Pickering. Go ahead, Joanne Basile.
Thank you, Representative Palm. Chairs of the Environment Committee, I'm Joanne Basile, the Executive Director of Connecticut Votes for Animals, which is a Connecticut-based grassroots advocacy organization dedicated to improving and protecting the lives of all of Connecticut's animals by championing legislative changes at the General Assembly. CVA is also a founding member of the Connecticut Coalition to Protect Bears. Well, this will come as no surprise. Connecticut Votes for Animals strongly opposes SB 1148 and SB 1149. I'm here to tell you that our members are shocked and saddened by the proposals, those two proposals before the committee. I'm not going to go into kind of my prepared testimony because so much of what I was going to say has already been said before me. But I want to just mention a couple of things. One, I think that in many respects, the bear hunt that's outlined in the proposal is really, it really raises false expectations for Connecticut residents who are told that killing bears are going to solve their problem. It isn't. And we know that there are solutions out there that do work, but they need to be put in place and they need to be done with a level of rigor that we haven't had in the past, and I would encourage you to do that. Secondly, there's been some talk this evening about on 1149 about the fact that there have been no problems or accidents with hunters. There's an OLR report that came out in 2020 that did a 10-year look back, and there's apparently about 50 hunting accidents in Connecticut during that 10-year period of time. But what I'd like to say, just from my own personal experience, I walk in our woods around my neighborhoods, around my area around here. I live on the shoreline in Guilford, and we have hunting at 6 days a week. And me and several friends who walk many dogs early in the morning, we don't walk them at that time because that's when the hunters are there. And but we can do it on Sunday mornings. And those are the mornings that we would like to walk our animals. So Lastly, I would like to say that while we're concerned about particularly big sections of 1148, there was a bill that was introduced by the Animal Advocacy Caucus, which was HB 5160. And it had
Joanne,
a
I'm
very
sorry, you're going to have to summarize. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your 3 minutes are up. Can you summarize, please?
Sure. I just want to say that it talked about a program to fund communities for non-lethal measures. It's based on a program out of Denver, or rather out of Colorado. It's a very good model to look at. It's not only good for communities, but it's good for farmers. And I would encourage the committee to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any committee members with questions for Ms. Basile? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to Francis Pickering, followed by Diane Lauricella. Francis Pickering, are you with us still?
Yes, I am. Good evening, distinguished members of the Environment Committee. My name is Francis Pickering, Executive Director of the Western Connecticut Council of Governments, representing 18 municipalities and a resident population of 620,000. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of House Bill 6809, an act concerning financial incentives for certain stream side buffers. Water quality Connecticut is, 30, 40 years after the passage of the Clean Water Act. It's not good. So many of our surface waters are not safe for fishing, swimming, or drinking. We also have an incredibly elevated flood risk profile compared to the rest of the nation, with 1% of the nation's population, but 11% of the severe repetitive loss properties and repetitive loss properties under FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program. The number one way to improve water quality and reduce the frequency and impacts of flooding in Connecticut is to have setbacks at the state level. Connecticut is the only state in New England that does not have mandatory minimum setbacks. Every other state, even freedom-loving New Hampshire, is ahead of us. In Connecticut, we leave that up to municipalities, and only 25% of municipalities have adopted setbacks in their zoning. This has led to an irrational situation where you have different setbacks on the same side of a stream, or where a municipality that has done the right thing environmentally is receiving water from upstream that is polluted because the upstream municipalities have not adopted setbacks. Bill 6809 would help begin to address this by allowing DEEP to buy conservation easements to ensure that setbacks are vegetated. And we support this, but even more importantly, we need to have consistent science-based standards for setbacks. If you look at how it's done in Connecticut right now, only one municipality prohibits storing hazardous materials near waterways. Only 3 prohibit parking near waterways. Only 11 prohibit manure near waterways, and only 1 prohibits salt storage near waterways. These can all have devastating consequences when they are flushed into our waterways. So when we look at the issues of setbacks, vegetation is wonderful, it's critically important, but so is distance. And we think this can work hand in hand with mandatory minimum setbacks at the state level, where it would not affect current development or current practices, but anything in the future, any future developments, any hardscape, hazardous materials, and so on and so forth, would be prohibited from being within a setback. And we are recommending that Connecticut increase its standards or create standards at the state level to tie with the second most lenient state in New England, Vermont, with 50-foot setbacks from streams and 100-foot setbacks from rivers. That's my testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pickering, for your expertise. I think it would be helpful if you were to suggest to the committee those changes that you believe would strengthen the bill. If you're willing to do that, sir, I think we would entertain them. Rep. Mashinsky, followed by Rep. O'Day. Mary, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Francis, thanks for that excellent list. Two questions. One is that in my town we actually have the setbacks, in Wallingford, but the landowners, including the town, cut the vegetation down. So the setback exists, and it is obeyed, and people keep their buildings out of it, but they still can run a lawn all the way down to the water, which doesn't really help much. So if you, in your list of other states, if you know which ones are required to be vegetated or not, or do people just automatically leave them alone and not cut anything on the setbacks in those other New England states?
So that actually varies from state to state, and you raise a very important point. And the testimony I submitted in response to this bill points out that the benefits of setbacks are both a function of distance and vegetation. So a setback that is lawn is better than having asphalt right up to a waterway. When you're looking at the transport of sediments, which can lead to turbidity in waterways, lawn works pretty well. If you're looking to arrest the migration of contaminants such as phosphorus and nitrogen nutrients into the waterway, then you need vegetation. And when you're looking at other states in New England, some of the states do not speak to vegetation. Some of them that are more progressive, such as Vermont, can have up to 600-foot setbacks, for instance, from vernal pools or from smaller from wetlands, about 200, 300 feet, depending. And those are required to be maintained in a natural state. I think the challenge we're seeing here is historically, local land use regulation has not regulated lawns. It's not regulated vegetation. It can do it under state law, but it hasn't done that. And that might be viewed as overly intrusive with respect to property rights. And so I appreciate the thinking behind this bill, because to change how we treat our land, not to mow it, may require some fiscal incentives from the state and also some messaging. For instance, having vegetation next to a river or a stream reduces mosquitoes, right? It's beneficial to property owners too. But there should also at the state level be a very minimum saying you can't build a parking lot up to 0 inches away from a stream or a river. So they're two related but separate issues.
Okay. Well, thank you. I put the incentive in because I've had no success trying to get the lawns to be vegetated with other than lawn. And I thought to put a value on them to show what the value is for filtration would be worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point of this. And when we tried to do statewide buffers several times, we couldn't get it past the home builders lobby. They did not approve of it.
What I would suggest is, if you look at other states, we have a lot of other states. It has not ended development there. In fact, all of those states have higher property values than Connecticut does. They have very dynamic property markets. So the sky is not falling here. If we cannot get a mandatory minimum setback through for everything, then it could be more nuanced. For instance, no hazardous materials, no manure, no salt, no septic systems in the setback, and start with the most critical issues first rather than everything.
Very good advice. And thank you for coming in and being so patient. Thanks, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Rep. O'Day, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Francis, for coming in. Just real quick, is there a particular state that you would recommend that we follow on the setback issue?
Well, I know it can be a tough sell because you are saying you may not develop your property within 50 or 100 feet, whatever the setback is, from a water course. But of course, if you are developing there, you are creating costs for the rest of us. And our proposal here is not to go to the top of the class, but go to the back of the class. Right now, we're not even in the class. Vermont has the smallest setbacks of all New England states. And we think 100 feet for rivers and 50 feet for streams is reasonable. This is for new development, mind you. Massachusetts does allow 25-foot setbacks in urban areas. So that there's that precedent too. Even 25 feet is better than 0.
All right. Thank you very much, Francis, so much. I really appreciate your testimony and have the highest respect for you and appreciate it. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other, oh yes, I'm sorry, Rep. Callahan, go ahead.
Just a quick comment, Madam Chair. Francis, thanks. What you're describing is already being done here on Candlewood. We have buffer gardens and setbacks, but it's controlled by the utility because the utility owns a line up to the 440 contour above sea level. So it's been in effect here for some years to protect Candlewood, and it was tough to get through and tough to get people to adhere to, but now it's a standard here.
Yes, I'm aware of that. And the reality is, even though the setbacks can, to some extent, they can limit what you can do with your property, they also limit what your neighbors, including upstream of you, do with their property, which nobody wants to have a dirty stream flowing by their house, and nobody wants to have their house underwater. So this does have broad societal environmental benefits.
But thanks for hanging in there, Francis. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, folks, we're going to move along to Diane Lauricella, followed by Eric Hammerling, although I don't see him, and I do see Nathan Froling is on. So Mr. Froling, you will probably follow Ms. Loricella. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Palm, and also the co-chairs that are taking a well-deserved break, Senator Lopes and Representative Gresco. My name is Diane Loricella. I live in southwestern Connecticut and in Norwalk. Thank you for the ability to testify virtually. I really appreciate it because of the distance and the weather. I am chair of the ad hoc Norwalk Zero Waste Coalition, and I'm also a member of the governor's GC3 Environmental Justice Working Group. I'm going to try to zip through some of your important bills and focus on the environmental justice bill. Senate Bill, House Bill 6809, I am so happy I was following Francis Pickering because I heartily agree with everything that he both submitted in writing and just right now testified. I'm the original founder of the Norwalk River Watershed Association and am currently on the Mayor's Water Quality Committee in Norwalk, although I am not speaking for either organization. I have seen firsthand the benefit of having reasonable buffers in order to not only slow down water, to cool down polluted runoff, but also to clean up polluted runoff, especially in these times of extreme weather events. I also wanted to support House Bill 6814, establishing a coding that is easy to remember and use. And I really appreciate what Palm, what you have said related to making sure that I support with funding of making this happen. And I don't think we can just wait for the industry because it's very confusing right now. And lastly, Senate Bill 1143, I just caution about the focus on gasification for the RFI. I would like to make sure the RFI goes out for all kinds of industries. I don't want us to pick winners or losers again, like we did when we went big and hard on waste to energy plants. So I'm going to focus with what little time I have left on Senate Bill 1147 about the EJ program. I first want to say I wholeheartedly support this bill. I have, of course, being on the GC3 working group for environmental justice, have offered suggestions, and I'm so pleased with so many of the hard work that so many different entities, including DEEP and CJAC and the governor's office and the department and all of you have done to modify this bill. I ask for some two considerations though. I'm not sure I'm running out of time, but I'll go as long as I can. The first has to do with, I want to ask that in line 11 through line 27, where there's a definition of an affecting facility, I ask that you add on line 27, letter J, and add a facility storing sand piles that are subject to 29 CFR section 1926.
Ms. Loricella, I'm sorry, your instinct was right. Your time is unfortunately up. Could you please put your suggestions in writing and email them to the leadership of this committee? We will absolutely take them under consideration. And I'm sorry to have to cut you off. Sure. I see a question from Rep. Michel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Loricella, for testifying tonight and hanging in. I just, what are your thoughts on the existing affecting facilities and the bill?
Thank you for the question, Representative Michel. I believe that finally we do have the types of facilities covered that are subjected, that oftentimes causes odor, noise, and stressors on people living around these facilities. But what is missing is for certain facilities where there is sand piles. And that could be a cement kiln, it could be a contractor yard. And there is a very strict law with OSHA 29 CFR section 1926.1153 about crystalline silica, which is part of sand. And that is a human carcinogen, and it is stringently regulated for the workers that are in and amongst and downwind or working amongst drilling into cement blocks, making bricks. But I have noticed, as one example, in Bridgeport on Seaview Avenue, there is a large contractor who has for years been allowed to leave sand piles uncovered. Now, the thing is, those should be covered. That is a local zoning permit issue usually. But the thing is, my point is that if anyone, an affecting facility included facilities where sand piles are needed to do their daily work, that it would be included in the community benefit agreement, and they would have to be made probably to promise to cover the piles at the very least, if not put them indoors. And that is something that the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm a former regulator with the Department of Environmental Protection. Back in the 1980s, I was a hazardous waste investigator, and at times was called to look at facilities where we have these additional, oftentimes ignored, or people that don't understand how dangerous certain types of sand blown in the wind could affect neighborhoods that live adjacent to them, often in urban populations, and oftentimes in environmental justice communities like Bridgeport, like parts of Norwalk, like Stamford, also like Hartford.
Thank you. Yeah, you reminded me that there are also more that we might be able to cover, such as, for example, construction project. For example, in Stamford, I have I think one of the biggest, if not the biggest, construction project in the U.S., and that means over 10 years of constant construction. And so there's definitely an impact on the air quality in that part of my district in the South End. But thank you, as always, for your good testimonies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we're moving on to Eric Hammerling, although I think he may have gone earlier. Eric, if you are on, please put your camera on, followed by Nathan Froling and then Ashley Zane, whom I do see. Eric, are you there, Hammerling? No? Okay. How about Nathan Froling? Are you still with us, Nathan?
I am here.
Great. 3 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Great to be here. Thank you, Vice Chair Palm, and all the members for being here so late tonight. Really appreciate it. And so excited about being able to offer our very strong support on Climate Bill, Senate Bill 1145. Nathan Froling, Director of External Affairs for the Nature Conservancy. Our organization has made climate change a top priority, and climate bills like 1145 are our top legislative priority for this session. I hope you'll peruse our written testimony for 1145 because it details why each of the key sections are important. It also makes recommendations about where and how the bill could be stronger. But let me be clear, we are steadfast in our support of the bill as is or with improvements. And that's because 1145 is the most critical next step for activating climate action in Connecticut. That's because at its core, it's about the planning we still need to do and the authorization still needed to implement that planning. We need each of these in order to produce the tangible results that get us to climate goals with the least cost, greatest economic benefit, and fair, equitable treatment of underserved communities. The bill doesn't move us all the way there, but it is the next best step. Connecticut has many of the tools that help address climate change, including the Global Warming Solutions Act, has passed the 100% zero carbon electricity supply bill, passed the Clean Air Act, and produces key reports like the Comprehensive Energy Strategy and Integrated Resources Plan. We have many of the pieces and parts. What we don't have is a roadmap that integrates and pulls these parts and pieces together into a cogent and clear path forward that shows us how we can meet our climate goals and what we must do at each point along the way. A comprehensive decarbonization roadmap can be the single most effective vehicle that serves as both a call to action and as a guide for that action, as is the case in Massachusetts, where they already have a roadmap. 1145, as is, provides the foundation for this roadmap, including identification of sector-specific targets that will produce much of the planning we still need. 1145 could be strengthened by taking that step and actually calling for the roadmap. The other key thing we need is the authority for DEEP to act. 1145 goes a long way in providing the authority that's needed, and without it, the planning, all the planning in the world won't go very far. In conclusion, we highlight four most important parts of 1145. One, upgrading the 2050 goal to net zero economy-wide. 2, establishing sector-specific sub-targets that will advance climate planning. 3, including natural and working lands and negative emissions. And 4, providing DEEP with at least the minimum amount of authority needed to act on behalf of our climate laws. Please pass 1145. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. And thanks for summarizing some of the things that the state has done right. We don't often hear that nice summary. It was good to hear that. And I know that you probably were watching our committee meeting this morning when we sorted out the Zero Climate Bill, which has provisions for a roadmap, but it couldn't hurt, to have it in more than one bill. So thank you very much for that. I do not see any questions for you. So I'm going to thank you as always for your expertise and move on to Ashley Zane, followed by Carrie Bernstein.
Thank you.
Ashley, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for sticking with it. Chairs Gresco and Lopes, ranking members Callahan and Harding, and Vice Chair Palm, as well as other distinguished members of the committee. My name is Ashley Zane. I'm a public policy associate with the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. In the interest of time, I want to align and I won't repeat what's already been said by Attorney Lee Hoffman. Additionally, on SB 1147, additional comments that we've received from our membership include the confusion and subjectivity in some of the definitions surrounding it. For example, environmental or public health stressors allows for mobile sources of air pollution, which could include sources of pollution that aren't even located in the environmental justice community. One question that came up with our group was, would some of these affecting entities need to consider each employee's personal vehicle as a source of emissions, or a bus service used to get to their physical location, or any other vehicle similar that would be on premise at any point. Additionally, potential public health impacts. This leaves each facility guessing about what to consider when conducting an impact study, and also allows DEEP to subjectively decide what should be included. This could lead to substantial delays both on the impact studies and also for DEEP, who, as many of you know, is significantly understaffed and a little bit overworked at this point in time. Also, the local level, planning and zoning boards can deny permits and do have a significant impact on the permitting process. We already have strong environmental justice laws, as well as other laws and other permitting processes that require a pollution plan. So with that, we don't necessarily believe that this statute will have the impact that it's intended to have on these communities. And I'm more than happy to take any questions, and thank you so much to everybody for sticking it out at this late hour.
Thanks back at you. I don't see any questions, but thank you for your testimony. I'm going to move on to Carrie Bernstein, please, followed by Jay Goodman.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Carrie.
It's a long day. Been waiting for a little while. In any event, I'm here in support of 1148, the bear hunting bill. I just want to give you my story. I am from New York City, purchased a home in Litchfield County approximately 3 years ago in had the COVID pandemic in order to escape the insanity where I live. In any event, I love Litchfield County, the restaurants, the bars, the land that I have. I have my own hunting utopia. And a big shout out to my state legislator, Jay Case, who has welcomed me with open arms. The one thing that I do have a serious issue with is Connecticut's handling of the bear situation. It's very problematic. It's something that's very dangerous. And it's a situation that in the year 2022, I probably had anywhere between 10 to 15 run-ins with black bears. I've been hunting for over 20 years, and seeing bears in the woods they're a majestic animal. It's wonderful. But what I am concerned about is while I'm able to enjoy the black bear when I'm in a hunting situation, my concern is when black bears are literally 10 feet away from my front door. When I see a sow on my security cameras with 2 baby bears in front of my home, I'm a little concerned, especially when I have a 15-year-old daughter who likes to play basketball, and I got to be concerned about whether or not black bears are going to be coming over at or near her and thinking that she's food. I don't think that the situation in Morris, where a child was almost mauled to death, has been given enough publicity. And this is not a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. This is a safety issue. I'm hearing the way to eradicate this dilemma is via getting rid of bird seed and with garbage cans. That's nonsense. These black bears, people are trying to make them seem that they're like Yogi Bear and they're so sweet. Black bears have no soul and they will kill you. And it is incumbent upon our legislature to change this law now, before somebody gets killed, as stated by so many other constituents. We could all play the game that these majestic animals are sweet and innocent, but that's completely wrong.
Mr. Bernstein, I'm going to need to ask you to wrap up, please. Your time is up.
I am done.
Okay. Rep. Callahan.
Just a quick comment and question, and I would concur, Mr. Bernstein, you're lucky to have Representative Case up there.
Thank you.
How often is it that you see black bears on your property?
As I mentioned, in the year 2022, I had anywhere between 10 and 15 close encounters with bears, ranging from anywhere from 25 yards with a 300-pound black bear to approximately 100 yards when I was putting my garbage out. And my security cams, that was my biggest concern when I had a 200-pound sow with her two cubs literally 10 feet in front of my home.
Okay.
What if I were to be walking my dog? What if my wife was alone? What if my 15-year-old daughter was walking one of my dogs? Enough is enough.
And last, just to follow up, how many days a week do you see the bears out there?
Again, I'm going to go back to your question. I've seen in the year 2022, approximately anywhere between 10 and 15 run-ins with bears.
Right.
I've seen bears with garbage. I've seen bears when I'm driving my Polaris. What's funny is my wife was saying to me, you don't seem to really get so animated. You know what? Because I'm so acclimated to it. But let's not kid ourselves. These black bears have no soul, and they will kill you.
Okay. I appreciate you coming out tonight, sir, and sticking it out with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's been a long day.
Rep. Anderson, you're next.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Mr. Bernstein, I agree. They're majestic animals, but wild.
Yes.
You know, with all these encounters you had, have you done any countermeasures, whether aversion and not keeping up bird seed and sealing your garbage?
Yeah, thank you. There is no bird seed on my property. I have one of those garbage cans that are allegedly bear resistant. What's interesting is that the recycling bin is not allowed to be bear resistant, but the garbage is. That's something that should be changed. I do have bear spray. I've given bear spray to my wife. It's just that, when you hear situations like what happened with Morris, that poor innocent child who was almost mauled to death, that the media, that Connecticut has not given merit to, it boggles my mind. These are not cuddly animals. They want food. And if you're an impediment to that food, you're dead. I don't care if you're the strongest guy in the world. In answer to your question, yes, I have bear spray. God willing, it helps.
Thank you.
You all set?
Thank you. Well, I just want to say that I did hear directly from the mother and the grandmother in person of that 10-year-old boy, and spoke to our eminent biologist in deep, and was described as a predatory attack, and a child was bitten twice. You know, I think once in the arm, once in the stomach.
Horrific.
And you know what I hear from some of those not that familiar with the attack, I actually hear, well, the boy must have been doing something, teasing the bear, or sounds like a blame the victim.
He wasn't doing anything. He was being a child. The one thing that can help this situation, and I've been hunting, like I said, for over 20 years, and I've hunted bear before in Canada. A hunt will teach these bear, they will feel fear. These bears do not fear us anymore. That's the issue. When a bear associates us with fear, you will have less confrontation and less of these issues where innocent children are mauled. This bear season must be passed. And it might also, from a financial end, it'll probably be, bring in some money into the state of Connecticut. Why should hunters go to Massachusetts or New York, where bear hunting is allowed, when we could have it right here in the northwest corner, or for that matter, in the entire state of Connecticut? Because the bear issue is not limited to northwest corner, it's throughout the entire state. Enough is enough.
Thank you. And I'm familiar with, I live on the Mass border, and I lived in Mass for the most of my years. And I do know people who recently have gotten a bear there. And people don't even notice the bear hunting. It's only a $5 permit on top of your regular license. It's not the impact people would think. And they harvest maybe 300 out of 4,500 a year. Thank you, Mr. Bernstein and Madam Chair.
My pleasure, and thank you for your reply to me. I appreciate it.
Rep. Michelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask a brief question just for situational purposes. Mr. Bernstein, by the way, thank you for hanging in with us and testifying this late in the evening. How far away are your neighbors from your property?
I don't really have many neighbors.
Okay. And then you did mention something about several times about the bear being with the garbage, but then you say you have I guess
bear resistant receptacle.
So is that like one that has that metal thing to latch it or to keep it closed?
I really don't know the exact makeup. That's not my expertise, but I do have a bear resistant receptacle. Unfortunately, many of my neighbors do not.
Right. No, and I appreciate your candor on this. I just think that I don't know what bear free or bear safe receptacle you have, but there are certainly some that work. And I think it brings back the idea that also DEEP needs to educate again about the bear, to the methods, right? The methods to keep bears away from properties, so that we limit bear human conflicts. Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
With all due respect to Representative Michelle, I have a question for you. How many instances have you had with bears? I was asked how frequently have I seen bears? I've seen them at least 10 to 15 times in the year 2022. How many experiences have you had with black bears?
Mr. Bernstein, I'm going to object to that question, sir. We are the ones asking the questions, not answering them. So thank you for your testimony. I'm going to move on, please. Jay Goodman, followed by Todd Wilson.
Thank you.
Jay Goodman, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Lopes, Representative Palm, Representative Gresco, Senator Harding, Representative Callahan, and members of the Environment Committee. My name is Jay Goodman, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Connecticut Industrial Energy Consumers, or CIEC. CIEC is an ad hoc coalition of large commercial and industrial, or C&I companies that collectively employ more than 45,000 Connecticut workers. More broadly, there are over 6,000 manufacturers and large commercial businesses in Connecticut. They account for more than 12% of the state's economy, employ more than 190,000 people, and drive significant direct and indirect economic activity in the state. CIEC submitted written testimony that made 3 points regarding Bill number 1145. First, CIEC recommends that large C&I customers be consulted if DEEP sets sector-specific emissions targets for these sectors. The limits should reflect what is technically feasible and affordable to implement. DEEP also should be authorized to grant exemptions and extensions for compliance if a company demonstrates that available technology or the cost of deploying it are not feasible. This would give DEEP discretion to balance implementation with potential statewide economic impacts. Many large C&I customers are energy intensive and rely on industrial thermal processes that are hard to decarbonize. Currently, there is no cost-effective technology available at scale that can decarbonize many of those processes. Other factors also can limit the amount and rate of emissions reductions that C&I customers can achieve, as described in our testimony. Our concern is that infeasible emissions requirements would put companies in the very difficult position of figuring out how to continue operating in a state that might not allow those operations despite best efforts to decarbonize. Second, to this last point, CIC members support decarbonization, and many large C&I customers are pursuing sustainability initiatives with emissions reductions targets that support state objectives. If committee members look at the sustainability web pages of large manufacturers in Connecticut, you would see that companies have made significant commitments to reduce emissions associated with their operations, their products, and their supply chains, and they have committed significant capital and other resources to do so. Connecticut's largest companies already are working to reduce their GHG emissions, and we recommend, therefore, that DEEP be required to consult with large C&I customers to develop the sector-specific emission limits that account for their ongoing decarbonization investments. Finally, Connecticut is home to companies that are developing advanced technologies that will support emissions reductions worldwide, including in industries that are notoriously hard to decarbonize. Connecticut has an opportunity to lead not only on achieving emissions reductions throughout its economy, but also to lead in the development and production of technologies that will support emissions reductions far beyond the state's borders. This is another reason to set C&I emissions limits at levels that are technically and financially feasible. Thank you for your time and for your consideration of our written testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. I actually don't see any questions. Appreciate your being here and staying with us.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Now we're going to ask Tasha Cusson, followed by Savan Pourhattan, and then Matthew Dobratz after that. Tasha Cusson, are you with us? Tasha Cusson. No? Okay. Savan Pourhattan. Is there somebody named Savan Pourhattan going once? No? Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on to Matthew Dobratz, followed by Joel Liza, whom I know I saw earlier. Matthew Dobratz, are you on here, please? Okay. Joel Liza, I see you. Thank you so much for waiting so patiently. Why don't you take over? And if Mr. Dobratz comes on, we'll circle back to him. Thank you, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak today. It's been a long one, but my name is Joel Liza. I've been a commercial fisherman for over 40 years. I'm extremely opposed to this bill 6812. I currently fish out of Guilford, Connecticut. This bill would devastate my business and my family. There's no justification for this bill. We haven't harmed the fish stocks, so that in my response to us not, for justification for the bill. We work very closely with the DEP to manage the fish quotas yearly and also reduce the bycatch with our mesh sizes. Commercial fishing is at one of the top regulated industries in the country already. We strive to run an economical vessel for economical purposes. I'm sorry. We're mindful of our carbon footprint as a second reason, to be economical with our vessels. And the state has worked with us to provide us a diesel emission reduction act, enabling us to replace older engines with less emission ones. It's the DERA program. I personally did it 2 years ago, and there's a few fishermen in Connecticut that I know have also done it. We provide a sustainable, renewable resource to local restaurants, fish markets, and tackle shops. We also provide a tourism aspect to the community. I feel the bill is unnecessary. It would be a tremendous step backwards without the inshore fishing. We would not be able to utilize the fishing quotas that we have worked diligently with the DEP to establish. In conclusion, I oppose this bill and urge you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lizza, for being with us and for your patience. I don't see any questions. Appreciate your being here. Going to move on to Ian McDonald, followed by Jeremy Frost, and then Captain DJ King.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Thank
sir.
you, distinguished members of the Environment Committee, for holding this hearing. My name is Ian McDonald. I'm from Killingly. I'm a member of the Wyndham-Willamette NAACP EJ Committee and a CJAC participant, though I'm speaking today on my own behalf. I'm here to support an amended SB 1145 and an amended SB 1147. Firstly, we should help make our state's climate goals a reality by strengthening and passing SB 1145. My suggestions for strengthening this bill center on creating more concrete enforcement mechanisms and are laid out in my written testimony and are very much in line with Mr. Frohling's recent suggestions. We should support the EJ bill SB 1147 strengthened particularly by the following amendments. Change the wording so that if a permit for an affecting facility is granted, deepen the setting council shall instead of may impose conditions on the construction and operations of the facility to mitigate public health impacts. Secondly, amend this law to ensure deep in the setting council shall instead of may deny new and existing permits for affecting facilities in already overburdened communities based on cumulative impact analysis. Being from Killingly and both observing and participating in the permitting processes of the proposed 650 megawatt NTE Killingly Energy Center and the Wheelabrator 68-acre incinerator ash landfill expansion along the Quinnebog River and neighboring distressed municipality, Putnam, Connecticut, I was able to see some of the shortcomings of deep in the setting council's permitting processes and the environmental justice law up close. So I'm very appreciative of those who worked to write that law. Killingly was already home to the 840 megawatt Lake Road generating facility, tied with the Towantic facility in Oxford as the largest fossil fuel power plant in the state when the 650 megawatt Killingly Energy Center was proposed. These two gas power plants would have been within a mile of each other and in the same village of our town as our elementary, middle, and high schools, all three of which my children and nearly all local children will attend. I'll also know my 8-year-old son already deals with asthma. Killingly had been on the distressed municipality list for around 3/4 of the last 2 decades, along with 2016 when the project was proposed and other years when many critical permits were applied for or approved. The scale of the existing facility with its accompanying pollution, our town at the time being on the distressed municipality list, along with the plant's proximity to our schools, ought to have been sufficient reason to deny such a large second facility in our town. Unfortunately, I've been told that under the EJ law at the time, DEEP had no real authority to deny this permit based on cumulative emissions or probable health impact on our community. This lack of ability to deny a permit is frankly somewhat astonishing and certainly ought to be rectified, as this bill seems to accomplish, and which is certainly a welcome development. That said, I don't think it is adequate for DEEP simply to have the ability to deny such a concentration of pollutants in a locality. At a certain point, communities deserve not only the ability of our agencies to make the right decision, but the right decision. In many ways, this is the essence of environmental protection, and as it relates to low and income or communities of color, environmental justice. This is in why, a large part, why we should change the language in the statute from may to shall. Moreover,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your time is up. Can you?
Okay, can I just make two brief points? Okay, thank you.
Briefly, please.
So, along with the needed default denial, also with the public outreach processes, those are no substitution for environmental protection. They're appreciated, but they're not a substitution. And finally, while the community environmental benefits agreement is also welcome, They shouldn't be seen as an excuse or compensation for authorizing excessive pollution in vulnerable communities. Thank you for hearing me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any from the committee, but I just have one question for you. Often those of us who advocate for environmental justice legislation hear that the assumption is that it's all about the cities. You're in Killingly, so would you care to comment on that environmental justice may not be just a city issue?
Yeah, I mean, cities are certainly overburdened and also very often have issues of, excessive traffic pollution. But yeah, 840 megawatt facility, that is tied for the largest power plant in the state. And then, having a second one proposed was kind of ridiculous. And as I mentioned as well, in neighboring Putnam, they had a large incinerator ash landfill and then 68-acre expansion. In nearby Sterling, Connecticut has a incinerator, as well as Plainfield, the next town over. So there are, if you look at the affecting facility maps, there's no doubt that Bridgeport, Hartford, New Haven are terribly impacted, and really should be, I think many facilities should be denied based on those impacts. But there are rural communities throughout the state that have similar issues, both with poverty and with concentration of affecting facilities.
Thank you. I think that's an important distinction. I don't see any other comments, but Mr. McDonald, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I would like to call up, please, Jeremy Frost, followed by Captain King, and then Rob LaFrance after him. Jeremy Frost, are you with us? I guess not. Okay, moving on to DJ King. DJ King, are you with us? Okay, Robert LaFrance, followed by Riley Armstrong, and then Catherine Galicchio. Boy, I'm striking out here. No Bob LaFrance. Okay, Riley Armstrong. No Riley Armstrong. Okay, Catherine Galicchio from 10,000 Hawks. Are you here? Charles Catania. I'm not on mute, am I, folks? No, okay. Timothy Sullivan. I'm running right down our list here, folks.
You're on a roll. Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Keith Schneider. Any Keith Schneider out there? No. Robert Smith. Okay, looks like we have the diehard crew that's left. Karen Kupek. Are you with us, Karen? Alicia Sharamet? No Alicia. Okay, Adam Peer.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Adam. Thank you for keeping us alive here. Go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So good afternoon, good evening. My name is Adam Peer, and I represent the American Chemistry Council, and I'm here to testify on S6814, which relates to plastic labeling and grants for plastic deselection. The ACC is an organization that's committed to all plastic packaging being recyclable or recoverable by 2030 and reusable, recycled, or recovered by 2040. As I understand it, the bill really does two things. It creates a state-specific plastic packaging label in Connecticut, and it would also create a grant program to encourage the deselection of plastics, including potentially using recycling funds. And so ACC opposes this bill for two reasons. I think one of them we've already talked about here is that it would be extremely difficult to create a state-specific label requirement because of the logistical and compliance issues that it would cause. We're also concerned about if a grant funding is created purely for just deselection of plastics without a greater life cycle assessment, that could inadvertently create more landfilling as opposed to less and bring less items into circularity. So one of the approaches that my colleague already talked about was the need for a national labeling strategy. And that's something that we support. And again, that's already been talked about. But the other thing that I wanted to add to the conversation is that we believe that many of the aims that this bill tries to address would be addressed by extended producer responsibility. And there is a proposal to bring that to Connecticut in H6664. The governor's proposal that would create an extended producer responsibility program in Connecticut, because we believe that that would potentially help create the infrastructure to increase recycling in the state and create many of the incentives that will lead to increased recycling and the manifest purpose of the legislation. So we make these suggestions because we agree with the overall intent of the legislation, increasing recycling and decreasing environmental impact. And it's our hope to work with you on this and other proposals to increase the circularity of all materials. So thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Peer, and good job staying under the 3-minute mark. My question to you is, we have heard now from a couple of industry representatives that they believe it should be a national initiative, and I couldn't agree more. However, waiting until National Plastics Industry Association gets its act together and does this voluntarily, you know, I won't see it in my lifetime. So in the meantime, often states can, as we say, be the incubators of great ideas. So can you explain to me why the plastics industry has not taken this upon itself to do this yet? If everybody keeps telling us that they're willing and they want to, what is stopping you?
I think really what it needs is a whole systems approach. And it's very hard to have sort of one-off bills that maybe attack one piece of it without attacking the whole system. And I believe the extended producer responsibility proposal that the governor put forth is a really good starting place. And I would urge you and your colleagues to squint really hard at that. No legislation is perfect, but that really is what brings all of the pieces together when it comes to education, design, labeling, pulls it all together to bring not just plastics in the circularity, but all items. So that's the way that I would approach your question, ma'am.
Okay, and to which I would only say that sometimes a small bill is better than no bill at all. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which despite its lofty name is actually funded by the fossil fuel industry, says that only 15%, and I think that's generous, of plastic is actually recycled. So one of the things that I think this committee is charged with is trying to protect the environment from excess plastic and to start it at its source. So I welcome your help on making this bill better or on making the problem go away. Have you looked into alternative plastics, bioplastics as they're called?
Yeah, so I certainly think bioplastics are going to be a part of the equation. I also believe that, you know, we can't forget about the other two R's, reduce and reuse. A reusable project is actually one of the things that I'm working on. This is actually a reusable ice cream container that I've been working on because we believe plastic has a really important role as far as being a reusable product that, you know, we hold is actually superior to other materials. So I think it's an all of the above sort of approach that, you know, we urge all of you to take a look at. And again, in systems thinking, look at the entire system, and there's a good start in House Bill 6664 that's worth taking a look at.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Peer, for being with us. I appreciate your being here. Our clerk is informing me that we have someone named Sue King raising her hand. Sue, are you on the list? And I apologize for passing over you. Anybody named King like to speak?
I have somebody named Sue King, and I've given her the ability to talk, and I just want to see if she's number 86, if that was indeed DJ King.
Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Okay, go ahead, please. Yep.
Sorry, I've been, you guys, when you skipped right by me, I just, I wasn't able to get onto it for some reason. Okay, my name is DJ King, not Sue King. And I've been a commercial fisherman and lobster fisherman and gill netter since actually 1969. And I'm opposed to the trawl net and gill net and long line bill. And I strongly disagree with this bill. This is the way we make our living. And sometimes I think that people think that they catch the fish behind the back doors and Stop and Shop. but it's really guys, hardworking guys, like you had Joel on a little bit earlier, who's a full-time dragger. I'm a lobster fisherman. I've done dragging before. I do gill netting. And it's guys like us that have to go out into Long Island Sound and catch these fish. Like Colleen had said earlier in the day, which seems like it was yesterday, it was so long ago. Our fishery is highly regulated. We have tags for blackfish. We can only keep a certain amount of sea bass. Lobster seasons are closed. We need this in order to make a living. And we are so regulated. And my wife is always telling me, she's a psychologist, and they are not even as regulated as we are. And they give out meds like Tic Tacs. So another thing was, your representatives were worried about the carbon emissions from some of our small boats. When you have thousands of trucks running through, diesel trucks running through the state of Connecticut, spewing out diesel smoke, and just a small fleet of our boats. And we also, similar to Joel, I have taken advantage of the Connecticut Low Emissions Diesel Act, which was a tremendous, something that Connecticut did was tremendous. And I actually got one of those low diesel engines, and a lot of my colleagues that work out there definitely definitely have those motors. Any of our new motors are all low emission diesel motors. You could literally go right up the exhaust and there's no smell at all. We also grow kelp here, and kelp is an environmental friendly type of fishing, and long line on the kelp. And the other big thing that I just can't understand is, in my lifetime, I've never seen so many whales and porpoises washing up on the beaches. And I think that is really due to some of these green energy windmills. Maybe people should concentrate on those things instead of trying to, push this bill, which really hurts hardworking fishermen in Long Island Sound. That's it.
Thank you, Captain King. I don't see any questions. I just want to say that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, has debunked that idea that windmills are causing the whales, but that's not what this bill is about. I do appreciate your being here. We're going to move on. We skipped over Karen Kupek, who I believe is now in the room. Ms. Kupek, if you are here, please turn your camera on and speak, and you will be followed by Roger Kuhns. Karen Kupek,
Hi.
there you go. Right ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna just keep this brief. My name is Karen Kupek. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm from Naugatuck, Connecticut. For over the past 30 so years, I've been a veterinary technician. So I just wanted to say that I do support HB 1149, the open season of Sunday hunting, as well as the HB 1148. What I do and what I would like to say is that I do appreciate DEEP from an animal perspective, being that I primarily do work with small domestic animals. I can appreciate what the DEEP does do for wildlife as well as large animals, including the bear. I do know that they have specifics as to what they do compared to what I do. There's no spay or neuter programs for wildlife. As we all know, you can't really potentially cute, love up, cuddly the animals. So I don't mind what they're saying about the basic pool that they're offering for sportsmen, just mostly for the aggressive bears. I don't believe that there's a need, and I don't believe that they're speaking out and the part of saying if a bear's passing by or in your yard, that you need to just openly go and shoot a bear. That's not, I don't believe what they're trying to come across or prove their point to be. As well as the Sunday hunting, I could just agree that I'm also an avid hiker. I do have 4 dogs of my own, and I do go hiking with them. Because I also am an animal advocate, I do keep my dogs on leash, as we do have a leash law. as you're supposed to in most state parks. Some deep will be open enough to allow you to let them off leash, but let's be realistic. You don't want your dogs running up to people, vice versa. You want everybody to enjoy the park where they're hiking. I don't see a need to have people be fearful if they're going to be hunting public, private land. That's up to, I believe, all of you legislators as to where, and again, with the deep, where the problem issues are that you could potentially all solve. But I just wanted to get my point across that I'm primarily an animal advocate, and I just wanted people to basically put their foot in another's perspective of a different shoe and open your mind to everybody's objectives today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quebec. Nice ending exactly at the 3-minute mark. I appreciate your being with us. I don't see any questions. Thank you so much. And we're moving on to Roger Kuhns, followed by Gary Yearman. Mr. Kuhns, you are up, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair Palm, and thank you to the committee and for all of you that do so much for us in Connecticut. I'd like to address several bills, and I have filed my written comments and suggested additions. The first, I support HB 6814, the coding system for designation of recyclable and compostable products. This bill is a step towards standardization, truthful coding systems for plastics, and to inform the consumer that what is really recyclable and what is not right now. We really do need this. It's a wonderful bill to pair with the EPR bill that has also been suggested this year. So this is an important one, and it's also one that Connecticut can lead on because there's no movement to change the system in a meaningful way on a federal level, and I go to Washington, D.C. a lot to work on these issues. So that bill I support. I support SB 1143 concerning solid waste throughout the state with the following amendment. I request removing lines 47 and 48 in section 3 that state gasification systems that convert solid waste into gas through a chemical reaction that does not consist of burning. The reason is that this conflicts with the state emissions goals and, in fact, with lines 62 through 66 in the same bill. I also support SB 1145 to establish sector-specific targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions and regulatory emissions of small off-road engines with the following requested amendments. Text lines 87 through 89 in section 2, sub 7. There's the negative emissions technology. This is, in fact, a carbon sequestration technology, and it's critical, and I've worked on these in detail, that the words be added, quote, that does not interfere with or contaminate surface or groundwater resources and does not induce seismic and other earth instability problems. This is related specifically to carbon sequestration technologies. I also suggest that for text lines 116 through 119, section 3, sub 5, to add the language, include robust statistical and environmental data collection that protects the database and results from double counting of carbon dioxide removal via natural systems. I also want to say that I am opposed to 1148, the Bear Bill, mainly because of some of the things that it's not including, principally a considerably more strengthening of environmental look and human responsibility. Thank you very much.
You ended exactly at the 3-minute mark. Thank you for that. And thank you for your close reading of so many of our bills. I would ask that you send the leadership of this committee all of your suggested changes in an email. I'm sure you're willing to do that. And I just wanted to ask you briefly just very quickly about the bear situation. Earlier, a couple of people had mentioned about relocating the bears, and there was a little bit of pushback from DEEP. I don't know how long you've been watching, but I wondered if you okay, then you heard that. Do you have any experience in this area? Because I know you had said you go to Washington and various hats that you wear. Can you address that at all, or is that out of your
No,
wheelhouse?
that's very much in my purview. I am a scientist. I have a PhD in economic geology, and I've worked on restoration of habitats across the country, and in fact in Canada as well, and on water resources and certain wildlife issues. And I have been out with a bear biologist in Montana, the Craighead family, where they captured and transported and released bears. Those happen to be grizzly bears. In my work across North America, I've encountered more than 400 or 500 bears, and I've been within a foot of them. And I've never had a bad example because it's how you behave. One of the things that I think is important is you can capture and transport bears. They did mention earlier that you'd have to get special permissions from other states like New York to transport them there. And that might be worthwhile for certain bears. Also, a bear biologist is qualified to make a field assessment of the health of the bear. If it's infirm or diseased, that bear does not get transported. So that's quite important. But another big part of this, Representative Palm, is the human responsibility. If you move to and live in a remote setting in the woods next to bear habitat, or you expand a subdivision into bear habitat, you will interact with them. And Deep has it exactly right. These animals are wild. They learn, they're smart, they're foragers, they're omnivores, and they're opportunistic eaters. So they will eat what's ever handy, especially in this past year, in part from climate change, in part from regular seasons of forests, that they had a shortage of certain nuts. So it's very important that that bill include a strong assessment of the ecosystems and habitats in which the bears are living and moving and across state boundaries, as well as how is that habitat being impinged upon by humans. I have gone hunting. I eat wild meat. I'm not opposed to hunting, but the Humane Society has confirmed through their research and other universities that hunting bears does not solve a bear problem. So we really need to be very cautious there. I respect the bear biologists in Deep. I think they're pretty good guys and gals, and I think that they're probably overworked, but they need to also take on that knowledge from other sources and build upon the science. The science is, we're always learning in science, and that's pretty important. So I think understand that we're all doing the best we can here, and we want to protect people. But again, as many people have said today, yes, there have been some bear attacks, but some of these things, when a bear is about to attack you or break into your house and cause harm, that's grounds for, killing the bear. But that's a rare event. That's a rare event.
I think one of the questions, I think all of our colleagues have been studying this and listening with open minds and open ears. Can you explain to me the difference between if we were to relocate 50 bears versus shooting 50 bears? What is the difference if we're reducing the herd or the flock, whatever the correct word is?
They're called sleuths. Yeah.
If we reduce it by 50, why does it matter how it is reduced?
Well, I think it's how humans interact with nature. If our solution is to kill something, we will eventually eliminate that species, as we have done with tens of thousands of species on the planet already. So one of the things that we have to be very aware of is if hunters want to hunt, that's their right, and they have lots of time to do that, and I think it's great. And many hunters in Connecticut hunt for food, and that's a great source of protein for families, especially in economically challenging times. But to shoot bears as part of a control system, again, what the Humane Society and other people who have testified today have demonstrated and stated, that does not solve problem bear situations. That's been documented. So, to move bears is showing some compassion for the ecosystems, and it's not an easy fix. It's much easier to shoot something than to trap it and transport it and so on. But I think we have to be aware of the human responsibility here when we build into and live and recreate within habitats of wild animals. We can't just keep removing these animals, otherwise those ecosystems will profoundly change. Bears are very important to the ecosystem. They do a lot of things. So I think it's worth relocating the the bears that are healthy and the bears that have cubs, because as was also stated earlier, if you shoot a sow with underweight or young cubs, very often those cubs will die. I have seen that myself. And sometimes another sow may adopt and take care of those cubs, but I've also seen cases where bears reject other cubs and in fact might kill them because they have cubs of their own. So it's not a simple one thing fits all. So I
Thank
think
you.
we have to show compassion and use the science to relocate those bears that we can relocate.
Thank you, Roger, very much. I don't see any questions. I appreciate your staying with us and your expertise. Moving on to Gary Yerman. Gary, are you with us? Gary Yerman? No. All right. How about Caleb Kleinman? Caleb Kleinman, please. Anybody there? Caleb Kleinman, no. All right. Chad Brayton. Number 101, Chad Brayton. Okay. Scott Smith. I see you, Scott. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you, all committee members, for hanging in there for this marathon session. And I'll be brief. You've heard a lot of expert testimony as to why allowing a recreational hunt to kill Connecticut's bears is not an appropriate response to their long overdue return to our forests and wild places. Tonight, I hope to remind you that there are proven strategies that do work to keep bears wild and people safe. Connecticut is late to the game in terms of helping residents coexist peacefully with bears. Other states have developed effective non-lethal ways to reduce unwanted interactions with such valued wildlife. We should learn from those best practices. For example, following 6 long-term studies, Colorado authorities worked with officials in Durango to put bear-proof trash cans at homes in certain neighborhoods to reduce bear-human conflicts. In areas without bear-proof cans, conflicts increase sharply. In Boulder, residents can access a downloadable map of where bear-resistant containers are mandatory in their community. The city's Bear Safe ordinance requires all trash and curbside compost to be secured from bears until collected by a waste hauler. Rather than focus on giving hunters permission to blunder through our woods to kill 50 bears for blood sport, why not help communities located in bear habitat institute and enforce bear-resistant trash programs and food waste diversion efforts? These bins cost about $200, even less when purchased in bulk. Barracuda's Kodiak container, for example, is fully automated and requires only a single driver to pick up. That company is based in Litchfield. Shouldn't they be a part of the solution? Why not require DEEP to equip campgrounds with the same measures and to pay more than lip service to promoting Bear Smart education programs? They do a little, but could do a lot more. And rather than give state agents further license to kill bears for farmers, why not task DEEP to enforce compliance with proven non-lethal strategies like protecting apiaries, chicken coops, and barns with electric fencing? We ask you to revise Senate Bill 1148 with the common sense solutions proposed by the Coalition to Protect Connecticut's Bears. Frankly, less than 1% of Connecticut residents are hunters. So, who are you listening to? But thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, and good timing on that. Appreciate your being here very, very much. I don't see any questions, however, Scott, thank you. If you have any suggestions that you think the committee should entertain, please email them to our leadership.
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Heaton-Jones, I don't believe is on. She may have testified earlier. Ms. Heaton-Jones, if you're here, if not, we're going to just breeze through the rest of this list here. Robert Smith. Robert Smith, are you with us? Okay, how about Chase Salazar?
I'm here.
Great. Go ahead, Chase. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for this light is doing something weird here. Yeah, thank you for the time today. I just wanted to talk about the Bill 1149 Sunday hunting and go back to the premise of where it started with blue laws and in regards to church attendance. I think we can all agree that we don't find that church attendance is the necessity for this bill any longer. That the question boils down to what we've heard tonight, a question of safety. So I think we can put it in comparison to blue laws that we've redacted. So one being the selling of alcohol in 2012. And let's compare a risk assessment between the two bills. So on average, let's say 2019, there was 94 fatalities from drunken driving. And not to say that I think we should get rid of alcohol, but I just want to put in context that when the bill was passed to allow sale of alcohol on Sundays, there was a risk assessment to the public damage that could occur by selling more alcohol throughout the week. Now, if we take in comparison what we're saying is a public safety threat and allowing hunting on Sundays, let's take into account how many people have been killed, non-hunters who have been killed by hunters from 2010 to 2019, and the answer is 0. So from a risk assessment standpoint, it's irrational to say that there is a safety issue, especially because we're far below our standards for what we say is acceptable for repealing a blue law. So with that, all I would say is that I think this boils down to a question about ethics in regards to killing animals. And I think that's just a cultural and historical decision that we have to make. And so with that, personally, I think that's something that historically we've done for centuries, and we should continue on as a culture. So thank you.
I see a question from Rep. Mushinsky. Go ahead, Mary.
I wanted to ask, it wouldn't be a blue law if we switched dates. So if the hikers got to have Saturday, and the hunters got to have Sunday, it would no longer be a blue law, but there would still be one day just for hiking working class people and another day just for hunting working class people, which I think is reasonable. But when when I take groups out hiking or join another hiking group, they do not want to be in the same place as hunters. They want to be separated by space and time. That's how they feel comfortable. They feel relaxed in the woods. They're uncomfortable whether they're at risk or not. They are very uncomfortable and they're not having a good day. So just like you want to go out and have a good day, so do they. They want to go out and have a good day after a hard week at work.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that we need to change dates, that it's a blue law. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is from a risk assessment, it's irrational to say that it's a safety risk. Just from the standpoint looking at previous blue laws that we've gotten rid of, or risk assessments of laws that we've allowed in concerning public risk. So it's well underneath what we consider a public risk. And to your point that we should allow people just because they feel comfortable to, I hate to use the word, but use prejudice towards other recreational activities. I just don't find that rational.
No, they're not prejudiced. Some of these people actually do hunt, but they don't want to be out there at the same time as hunters. They want to look at the birds. They want to hear the birds sing. They want to have a quiet experience in the woods. And I've had people refuse to come on hikes if it was on a day when hunting is allowed in a preserve. They just won't come. And so basically you're taking away something from them, and they just want what you want. They want their day in the woods.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're gonna need to disagree. Is I think if you were to, and I invite you to come out hunting with me sometimes, if you were in the bog in the marsh, I rarely see people out there walking around, one, because you need a boat and waders to get out there. So I think if the solution is that we don't want hunting in recreational hiking areas, I think that's a different discussion, but an all-out ban is I don't find reasonable.
Rep. Mushinsky, any other questions? Rep. Mashinsky, any other questions?
No, it's late, Madam Chair. I'll stop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
for your question.
All right, thank you, Chase. I don't believe Lori Brown and Alex Rodriguez are here. They must have testified in person. If I am wrong about that, let me know. Susan Eastwood, are you still with us? Susan Eastwood? Bob Petzold. Robert Petzold, are you with us? No? Okay, we're getting to the end of our list here. Catherine Farnsworth? Ms. Farnsworth, are you with us? No. Christine O'Neill.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi, there you go. Christine O'Neill, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, honorable committee members, and a special good evening to Representative Palm, Representative Michelle, and Representative Mashinsky, who are tireless heroes for Connecticut's environment. I am a Wolcott resident with a master's in environmental management and career in environmental planning. I strongly oppose SB 1148, a bill that would allow bear hunting, and SB 1149, which would permit Sunday hunting. Black bears do not deserve death just because they are behaving as they always have and seeking out food. Humans are the ones who created this problem by eliminating enormous swaths of habitat and then tempting bears back with crops, livestock, and trash. Furthermore, a hunt occurring deep in the woods is not going to deal with the issue of bears creeping into suburbs. I own 2 small pets, and I am not afraid of bears because I use common sense measures to keep my girls safe. Humans, domesticated animals, and wild animals do not need to be at odds. A much simpler solution is to remove the attractants that actually create the issue, some of which are covered in other parts of this bill. This can include using bear-proof trash cans, removing bird feeders during peak times of the year, and protecting beehives, chicken coops, and crops with electric barriers. These measures, coupled with ongoing public education, are what will turn the corner, not hunting. I'll quickly note from a 2019 study, quote, sustainable harvest, meaning hunting, was ineffective at reducing human-bear interactions and incidents in the near term, and might have increased both. Our results support a long history of research showing that natural food availability is the primary driver of human-wildlife conflict, end quote. Furthermore, because we generally do not eat bear meat or make use of their bodies, this law would empower trophy hunting, a horrific practice that glorifies killing as a sport. Yes, bears can be dangerous. So can cars and alcohol and hurricanes. The answer to these threats is not to kill a living creature, but to put common sense measures in place so we can coexist with minimal harm. Next, I urge you to consider voting down SB 1149, the testimony for which has been flooded by hunters. Only 1% of Connecticut residents own a hunting permit, or 34,000 out of 3.6 million. Hunters do not speak for Connecticut. They already have every weekday and half of the weekend. Let those of us who prefer humane coexistence to have at least one day. I encourage you to limit hunting as much as possible to reflect the values of nonviolence and compassion for wildlife. I welcome questions and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. O'Neill. I see a question from Rep. Michelle.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill, for hanging out with us and testifying tonight. I appreciate the use of words of compassion, and I have actually met black bears in the wild in Connecticut on several occasions, and had a wonderful experience. Just like the gentleman earlier who was talking about hundreds of experiences such as, and without ever having a problem. Like you said, you're bringing it back to the feeding the wildlife, having attractants, and that's why we're here tonight. So thank you very much for testifying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to move on to Sidney Holbrook, who I see is on camera, followed by Bart Mansi.
Thank you very much, Representative Palm, members of the Environment Committee. My name is Sid Holbrook. I serve the state as the Commissioner of Environmental Protection. I serve the state as a member of the legislature and sat on this committee. And let me begin by saying I'm glad I don't have to make a decision on the bears tonight. The reason I'm here this evening is I'm an honorary member of the Southern New England Fishermen and Lobstermen's Association. The fishermen have been a group that I've been associated with since my time in the legislature, and I went on to become a member of the association. I'd like to associate my remarks with those of Senator Summers and the other fishermen that have spoken in opposition to to HB 6182. If its concern is the resource, I don't know why the issue isn't that's being discussed recreational fishing. There are many more recreational fishermen in Long Island Sound than there are commercial fishermen. If the issue is enforcement, the issue as far as enforcement goes is a nightmare. New York will continue to hand out these licenses. Fishermen from Connecticut may obtain a New York license. How are they going to tell if the fisherman had his gear, his equipment, and was over in New York and was coming back into Connecticut waters? I don't see how they can do that. If there's an issue related to the bottom and what's going on with the bottom when they trawl, well, as been stated before, it's been documented that the trawling on the bottom has enhanced marine life. And I would also say if there is a concern about the bottom, then let's look at all these windmills that are being constructed. Let's look at the cables that are going to be laid, and let's look at the damage that's being done to the bottom as they plow the bottom to install the cables. Gill netting is very important to one fishery in this state. That's the shad fishing. If you do away with gill netting, then Representative Palm, your district, which has the Connecticut River and has a lot of shad fishermen in the Connecticut River, will no longer be able to catch shad. That is how they catch shad, with gill nets. So that fishery will be gone. As was stated before by the DEP, I would suggest that we leave the management of this resource to the state, federal entities and let them regulate the resource. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, sir, and thanks for your years of service to the state. I see our Chair Joe Gresco, followed by Rep. Mashinsky and then Rep. Piscopo. So hang on, please, Mr. Holbrook.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you for sticking it out with us. And I just had a quick question from an Atlantic Marine Fisheries point of view. How has their recent actions affected how your organization has done their business, specifically in the DERA and also the size of the mesh going forward?
Well, the size of the mesh is very important to deal with the catch and the bycatches. And there is no issue, as far as we're concerned, with the Atlantic Marine Fisheries Council. They do what they have to do. There are fishermen that serve on that. People like yourself serve on it with the knowledge of the people that they're representing. And we're glad to have you, and we're glad to have that commission work along with us. But as stated before, we are a very highly regulated industry. As somebody said, the psychologists aren't regulated as much as fishermen are. So thank you for the question. And I would just say that isn't really an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Good seeing you again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Rep. Mashinsky, questions?
No question. I just wanted to welcome Sid back to the Environment Committee. We miss you, Sid, and you're always welcome here.
I always enjoyed working with you, Mary. It was a fantastic time. And like I said, they're still talking about Sunday hunting. We were talking about that in 1986.
We're still talking about balloons too, by the way, Sid.
Right. I miss you, Mary.
I miss you, Sid.
You know, Mr. Holbrook, we did give ourselves this enormous raise, so you might want to consider coming on back.
Even with that raise, Representative Palm, I don't know if I'd want to do it. It's a lot of work. It's many hours. And it's 10:30 at night. I'm at home. You're still working.
Yeah. Rep. Piscopo, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with that raise. We can bring my old buddy Sid Holbrook back in the Environment Committee. We spent a few late nights sitting next to each other with Representative Mashinsky as the chair back then. I just, no questions, Sid. I just want to say it's great to see you. Great, you're still involved with the fisheries and lobstermen, and you keep swinging. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much, Sid. Good to see you.
Thank you, John. And some of those nights we weren't sitting in a committee room, though, were we?
All right, you guys, take it off.
Right.
Bart Mancy, you are up for for your 3 minutes. Mr. Bart Mansi, followed by Tom Maloney.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Oh, thank you, Sid. My dad would be proud. I'm happy and sad to say that my name is Bartholomew Manzi IV. I am 34 years old, and I'm a second-generation fisherman. My father, along with DJ, Pete Consiglio, and the others, they have been fishing the Sound for over 40 to 50 years, whether it be lobstering, oystering, clamming, dredging, trawling. They've done it all, and they've had to overcome many obstacles in this industry, whether the biggest being in the late 90s with the lobster die-off. As many of my colleagues have said, and how it should be stated even more so, the DEP has regulated this industry so much that you cannot do anything between the mesh bags, if we're talking about the troll lines, or the fish pots with the escape fence, or the bait bags that need to be in the conch pots. I do not see much future in this industry, and it's hard to be a 34-year-old with a full-time job in this industry. I make 100% of my living on the Sound. I'm trying to raise a family, just bought a house, just bought a new boat. The grants that the state gives us for the clean energy bill have been accepted by DJ King, as he said, Mr. Gilbert. My father also took part of the program. Joel did. The CO2 and the energy that of the diesel fuel has nothing to do with the commercial fishery. It has to do more so, like Sid said, we should be regulating the, let's call them the weekend warriors, the people with center consoles with 650 horsepower engines on the back. What I would just like to say is that if you look into the near future, I'm not sure whether this obtains to this or not, but this all has to do with the windmills. And if I could bring up the bill talked about in one of the assemblies in the previous session, 522, and that is talking about the windmills. The purpose, if I can quote, to require offshore wind energy developers to create and fund that will compensate for negative impacts to fisheries. I'm not sure if the state has thought of a compensation fund that would be available to the people out there right now if you were to just eliminate this. And I know Mr. Michel has brought this bill up, and he was talking about the environmental impacts on the ground. And as my father had said, in the early 80s and 90s, there were so many lobsters out there. If you could picture it as you were tilling the ground as if you were a farmer, you want to enrich your ground. That is what is happening in the Sound for these draggers. There's not much impact for the trawlers. It's just like enhancing more nutrients into the Sound, and the sediment, as Mr. Gilbert said, dissipates very quickly. So it just enriches everything. Like I said, the impact is not there. And being so young and not seeing so much of a future and having to deal with this, I took the day off and been listening for 12 hours now. We are actually installing a grant-funded engine on a boat that I'm working on installing. And I would just like to say thank you, committee, for all your time, and the DEP for being alongside on opposing this bill.
Thank you, Bart. I appreciate it very much. Rep Michel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mansi, for all the respect for taking the day off and for your interest in participating in the public hearing. I just wanted to answer your question. Yes, there's a bill, bipartisan bill, that's about mitigation fund for fisheries, environment, and also labor creation, and that's in the works in another committee. But yes, there is definitely this discussion and being taken very seriously. And as far as the emissions that I was mentioning earlier, it's not from the engines, but it was pretty much, and I guess it depends on where it is done, but when the metal gear breaks the seafloor, if it does that, then it will release long sequestrated carbon from dead marine life that, that's basically being recycled into the seafloor. There's peer-reviewed studies about that. So I'm just curious and trying to find out more. I know there are numbers estimates, and it depends on the size of the vessel, of course, and it depends on the size, I guess, of the metal gear. But just wanted to point that out. And again, I appreciate you testifying.
Yeah, and I appreciate you too. And like another colleague said, if you are a good dragger, you're trying to do the least damage to the ground because you're trying to catch the fish. You're not trying to get caught up on rock piles or catch mud or break your gear. So it takes many years. The people that have been doing this have been doing it for 20 plus years. You're not seeing any young generation come into this industry because it's so hard to get set up between a boat, a slip, gear. You're talking $250,000 to $500,000 just to get started in this industry. And I just want to make one more point that New York is not having this bill. So whether we pass this bill, which we all strongly oppose, I haven't heard one person tonight who opposes, who supports this. New York is not going to get rid of it. So whether we get rid of it and they still are along with it, it makes no sense to me how why we should, and then New York still gets away with it. And how Sid said, you can go over to New York and get a license yourself, and you would never be able to tell whether a Connecticut dragger was on state lines or was over the New York line. So I just think more thought needs to be going into this because it's going to cause massive devastation to the industry, the people that worked in the industry, and along with the seafood industry as well.
Thank you, Mr.
If I
Menzi.
may, I'm sorry, I'm not done, Madam Chair. I apologize. And, Mr. Menzi, if I may ask you something that I was going to ask maybe Mr. Holbrook, but I can ask you. Have you seen like dramatic? I think you said you've been doing it for.
I've been doing it since Mr. Guzzo, who was in the committee at 11:30, could buy me a pair of Oilers when I was about 5 years old. So I've been doing this since I could stand on the ocean.
And has there been dramatic changes with the sea life?
Dramatic changes, yes. Like I said, if you were to envision it as a big farm and tilling your farm for the crop for the next season, if you go look back into the 80s and 90s, there were so many lobsters and so many fishermen in the industry until the pesticide, which my father and Nick Krismali were a part of the National Lobstermen's Association, got sued the entire scientists because of the pesticide that got into the wash off that killed 99% of the lobsters, and we have not seen them. So we had to take drastic changes into what we can catch. So now we have moved to sea bass, flounder, conch, whatever needs to be done. The die-off, if that had not happened, my life would be completely different because I would be a full-time lobsterman. Now I'm targeting conch, and in the time that I cannot catch conch, I work with Mr. Joel on his dragger, or Mr. Consiglio, or Mr. King. I'm doing anything I can as a 34-year-old person coming up in this industry who has been doing it forever to just make a living and to provide for my family. It is very hard because we are so highly regulated and we follow all the rules and regulations that the DEP has set for us.
And there are like, I think less than 10 out of trawlers. And my question to you would be, so are there other similar size fisheries ongoing without the use of other trawls? And could there be a consideration to maybe
it comes down to the state that they give us a quota on different types of species of fish. We were at a meeting in early January talking about the quota for this year. You're talking 50,000 plus pounds for different species quotas. You cannot go catch 50,000 pounds with a gill net per se. You have to use these trawlers. And the logbooks has like all the colleagues have said, the logbook, the days at seas, the hours, everything gets filled out. The quotas that we have gotten from other states because we meet our quotas and bring so much into the industry. What is the point of all the work that has been laid out before us to right now? How can you go catch 50,000 pounds of, let's say, sea bass with a hand net? It is physically impossible.
Right. I mean, okay, but I mean, I was thinking maybe there are others. Anyway, for the sake of time, I'll try to.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate you responding, Mr. Michel.
No, I appreciate it.
We need to move on. Thanks. We need to move on to the next.
Thank you, Chairman.
Last few speakers. Tom Maloney, I see you waiting there, followed by Eddie Blue. Go ahead, Mr. Maloney.
All right. Evening, Vice Chair Palm and esteemed committee members. I am testifying in support of SB 1148, the Bear Bill, and SB 1149, Sunday hunting. It's late. I'll keep it short, as plenty has been said about both bills. It's clearly indisputable that there is a bear issue in parts of Connecticut. Through the day, we've heard plenty of testimony suggesting mitigation strategies that are already being employed and endless references to studies show. It's time we listen to the professional biologists that CT employs to manage our wildlife and who support this bill. Let's provide them the tools that they're asking for to maintain an appropriate bear population. Regarding Sunday hunting, again, plenty has been said throughout the day. A number of speakers in support of this bill have expressed exactly what I've experienced numerous times, and that is interactions with non-hunters have always been positive. I remember one instance hunting at Barn Island last year. My hunting partner and I ran into a family with 2 young children out for a walk. We had a wonderful 30-minute talk with them. They had a bunch of questions about our dogs, how we hunt the pheasants, the natural history of the game, how we cook them, et cetera, et cetera. It was all very positive. More typical is saying good morning to someone as they go by and a wave. I've never had a negative interaction. I've never had somebody express concern with us being there. The reality is it's not the non-hunters that object to Sunday hunting, it's the anti-hunters. It's plain and simple. The opposition to Sunday hunting is nothing but a bias-driven attack trying to hide behind some perceived public outcry. In a day of testimony, I haven't heard any scientific or logical justification for banning Sunday hunting. A previous speaker of an animal rights group misrepresented some of the data from the OLR report. I actually reviewed that report prior to submitting my written testimony. She mentioned 30 hunting accidents. What she didn't mention that those were almost exclusively hunter self-inflicted or hunters on the hunters. There were only 2 issues in 10 years that involved non-hunters, neither of them fatal. That's over the course of hundreds of thousands of participant hours by both hunters and non-hunters. So I think it's safe to say they incur far more risk driving to their walk than the actual walk itself. And of course, non-hunters have countless other properties to enjoy on a Sunday if they are actually worried about that astronomically low risk. So in conclusion, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And again, I support the bear bill and the Sunday hunting bill. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Mr. Maloney. Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Eddie Blue, followed by Aaron Williams, if Aaron is still here. Eddie Blue.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair and Environment Committee. I am in support of SB 1149. I obtained my hunting license at about 13 years old. I'm proud to say I'm a part of 5 generations of hunters. My 4 children and my adopted son all have been going out hunting with me since they were 6 or 7 years old. Hunting has been instrumental in helping us to provide food for our families. My grandfather had 14 kids, and they survived off the food that they caught in the woods. And he also helps his neighbors and people in the community with feeding them as well. I now have 4 grandsons that I'm excited to introduce them to the wonderful outdoors in Connecticut, as it's been such a blessing for me to live that life. Just some quick numbers. I've spent roughly $1,600 on licenses in Connecticut in the past 13 years to get out and hunt. I own 2 businesses and I have 2 young kids at home, and I'm very stretched to get out into the woods, period. Seasons get by sometimes with me harvesting 1 white-tailed deer for the entire season, and the season goes from September 15th to December 31st, and regular zones and zones 11 and 12 to through January. AAA Northeast attributes 32 deaths in Connecticut to car-related accidents in 2022. In October to December 2019, 423 deer were linked to car crashes in Connecticut. There are over 100,000 deer in Connecticut. And yes, we may represent a minority, but we are conservationists. So many deer hit on the Merritt Parkway between Hamden and Wallingford. DOT parks on the side of the highway to pick up the carcasses of deer after they're hit. I will close on this. In closing, we always greet and engage non-hunters and let them know that people are hunting, and wearing blaze orange would be a great idea if they're going to go hiking in the woods. We welcome our fellow hikers and bikers where we hunt. I use every opportunity that I can to educate non-hunters and show them that we too are conservationists. At the end of the day, we all live here and we should all learn how to get along and share our space. After all, this is a beautiful state. I've enjoyed living here my entire life, and I hope to continue to do what I love and pass it down to my kids. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Blue. We appreciate your being here. I don't see any questions. I'm going to move on to Aaron Williams, although I don't see Aaron on the charts here. Ruth Canovy. Ruth Canovy here. Claudia C. Okay, A. Dow. A. Dow. All right, Lori Brown, I see you. You are up next. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Representative Palm, co-chairs and members of the Environment Committee. My name is Lori Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. I've submitted written comments in support of 8 of the bills on your agenda today, and in opposition to 2 of them. CTLCV actively supports 1147, the environmental justice legislation. And you heard earlier from our CTLCV policy coordinator, Juliana LaRue. We also support 1145 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, 6809 to incentivize protection of our rivers and streams with vegetated buffers, 6813 to protect nesting shorebirds, 6812 to prohibit environmentally damaging commercial fishing practices, and 6814 to help clarify what can and cannot be recycled or composted in our state. So we're strongly opposed to 1148 and 1149 for the recreational bear hunting and removing all restrictions on hunting across the state, respectively. I'm only going to speak about 2 bills quickly tonight, the greenhouse gas emissions legislation and the bear hunting bill. We consider the climate bill 1145 to be the most significant next step that our state can take on climate change. The bill reflects a lot of conversations between the deep advocates and lawmakers and includes many excellent provisions. And we're very glad that you've recognized the significance of natural lands as an essential part of the solution. But there are some areas that could be strengthened in the bill. Most notably, we'd like to see a requirement for the state to develop a comprehensive roadmap that ties together all the programs and actions that will actually show us how, when, and what it will take to get us to our ultimate emissions targets. But on the subject of bears, I want to add our voice against 1148 that promotes private recreational bear hunting. The concept relies on the false, or at least, unproven assumption that hunting bears will in any way address the problems of bears who come in conflict with humans. Killing bears in the deep woods where they are naturally supposed to be is a completely useless tool for the problem you're trying to solve. The deep already has and uses its authority to destroy bears that come in conflict with people, their pets, or their farms. So the bill you really should be looking at is 5160. I think you've heard this already. This proposes a few programs that provide effective non-lethal tools to benefit both humans and bears. And Commissioner Dykes had talked earlier about having the right tools. Well, DP has the tools, but they've not been using them. And we must exhaust the non-lethal methods first. So please check out also the bearsmart.com website for all of the different proposals that are available to DEP and to the state. And then just finally, I'll say, I don't believe there's ever been a serious effort to gather all the experts together to figure out what the science really says and what we need to do and how we need to measure success going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks for staying under the 3 minute. I don't see any questions. Appreciate your expertise as always. We have 2 folks left, I believe, Mike Noel and Joseph Gilbert. I see Mike. Sir, before you speak, I just want to say if there's anybody I have missed, I apologize. Please let us know somehow, raise your hand or something like that. Okay, Mike Noel, go ahead, sir.
Okay, sure. Thanks so much, Vice Chair Palm. Good evening, Chairman Lopes, Chairman Gresco, members of the committee. Thanks for hanging in there. My name is Mike Noel. And I do apologize if I fall asleep in the next 3 minutes. It's been a long day. I'm a director of public affairs for TAMRA. We're headquartered in Shelton, Connecticut, and I'm going to provide comments on SB 1143 on a topic you haven't heard about this evening. TAMRA operates in every major state or country with the deposit recycling system in the world, including all 10 US deposit states. I'm talking about bottle bills or recycling refund programs. In Connecticut, we provide reverse vending machines, clearinghouse services, and container pickup and processing services for the beverage industry. And we appreciate the historic and continuing support this legislature has for the bottle bill and seeing it modernized. For SB 1143, this bill would require stores, when a reverse vending machine is out of service, to post a sign near the machines with the location of the nearest redemption center, essentially telling them to try to get their money back elsewhere. So while I'm sure this proposal is well-intentioned, it proposes a significant risk for the public to get their deposit money back, and I'll explain why. First, the spirit of this bill, which I think is to make sure people have easy access to get their deposit money back and participate in recycling, it's already covered under the existing law and regulations. The deposit law regulations today state, in the event of mechanical breakdown or if for any other reason the reverse vending machine is not available to accept containers, the dealer, that's the legal term for the store, shall provide an alternate procedure for redemption. So this is typically done at the customer service counter. You just hand over your containers and you get your money back. You don't need to go elsewhere. However, requiring stores to direct people to the nearest redemption center would discourage stores from fixing their reverse vending machines, because it would make it harder to redeem at that store, and that might make you redeem elsewhere or stop altogether from deposit recycling. It might not be worth the effort. It's also not fair to the nearby retailers who are providing the recycling service because they're taking on additional volume from the free riding retailer. This runs counter to the Connecticut model for deposit return systems, which prioritizes making it really easy and equitable for the public to get their deposit money back. And it's particularly important as the state prepares to increase the deposit value from 5 to 10 cents in January. My last point, directing consumers to the nearest redemption center is not an effective strategy for providing convenient access to refunds, because not every community has a redemption center. For example, if you live in Salisbury, the nearest redemption center is an hour away. So we respectfully ask you to strike Section 2A of 1143. Thank you. I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your ending on time. Any questions from the committee? I don't see any. I appreciate your being here. And we also have a Joseph Gilbert on our list, but I don't see him on the screen. Joseph Gilbert, are you with us? And would you like to speak? I believe, chairs, I believe that's the full list. We have finished our turning it back over to Joe Gresco and Senator Lopes.
Yay and hallelujah. Nice job, Christine. Thank you.
Ditto.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I just said ditto. Thanks. Thank you, Christine.
All right. See no other business. Everyone have a nice weekend. I think we are adjourned on this public hearing.
Nice job, guys. Thanks.
And I would say that this would be our last public hearing.
Well, if it is, let's just double check Dave Michelle doesn't have any questions.
More importantly, where's Steve with his pizza?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Good night. Meeting adjourned.
Night.